Hello, and welcome back to still another video. This is the second episode of the story in which Naruto loses his eyes, but his wind affinity reaches to point where he uses wind as sonar system. This story comes from Dental Rush. Kindly support him or her. Like and subscribe to show your support. Let us begin this show. After an hour of two, the savagery from the sky that descended upon Konoha and its surrounding areas slowly relented and surrendered to the impassable resistance of the untamed land. The cacophonic downpour became a pathetic drizzle that was more annoying than anything else. It was as if the rain had accomplished a rather spiteful purpose. It waited until the last stinking drunkard in Konoha secluded himself for a good night's sleep before finally retiring. The celebrations that had been tempered in rainwater had faded into cloistered family and friendly gatherings within the safety and warmth of four walls, a floor and a ceiling. Eventually, only the feistier ones defeated the rain and continued their revelry after the downpour became a mild sprinkle. Certainly, it was as if the gods themselves didn't approve of the celebrations, because the watery sign of their distaste only disappeared after they were mostly over. It was still night time when this happened. Sunrise would arrive a few hours later. After the night's festivities, Konoha would be late to awaken. Only the Shinobi population of Konoha was denied the benefit of sleeping a few extra hours, and many of them would have to pay the price for a few too many shots of sake. Yes, it would be a slow morning after for the village hidden in the leaves. Nature, on the other side, didn't follow the haphazard schedules of men. Nature followed its own pace, its own heartbeat, honed by millennia of constant adaptation and driven to absolute precision by the many laws that govern it. The sky and the rain had done their job the night before, and the green land would only respond in kind. That morning, the world would shine greener and more brilliant than ever, the millions of leaves that created the awe-inspiring greenery of the great Shinobi village revealing a glorious luster brought by the morning dew and the downpour of the night before. Water brought with it the blessing of life, and it showed. The few human eyes that were up and around were blessed with a scene of the most pure magnificence, and one Mato guy exclaimed at the top of his lungs odd poems about the youthful beauty of the new day and how he would revel in this beauty by performing all sorts of unreasonable feats. Nature didn't care, just like it wouldn't care when, a few years later, a second voice joined the extravagant jounins. It was a beautiful morning, indeed. Water brought with it the promise of renewal. Plants sprouted, flowers blossomed and the whole world reveled in an orgasmic explosion of life. It was as if the natural landscapes of Konoha had been reborn. Rebirth. It was an appropriate word, because, in the darkness of the rainy night that gave way to that morning, and in the hours that followed, more than one person would be reborn. In more ways than one. The underground facilities under Urazen Saya's dojo consist simply of a waiting room and an operation room. There are no bedrooms for the convalescent patients because Saya never intended to run a hospital. Saya's facilities were meant for emergency treatment, Saya's research and experimentation and, more than 3 decades before, Tsunade's medical training. For that reason, Naruto had to be carried, by Itachi, to the guest room of the Urazen main house, sheltered from the rain by the males' combined efforts. A while later, after Saya once again locked herself inside her not-so-secret anymore underground rooms claiming she needed to do medical things, and after Itachi was, once again, left to watch over the sleeping Naruto, Sarutobi's suggestion, Hayashi and the Urazen couple raised an untrusting eyebrow. Itachi actually seemed annoyed for once. The 3 remaining males did what Saya had been doing until Hayashi, Itachi and his bodyguards arrived, watching the stormy sky and the falling rain, calmly seated on the wooden floor, protected from the elements by the dojo's ceiling. Hayashi's Chunin bodyguards and Itachi's Anbu squadron had already moved the dead body of the person believed to be Naruto's attacker to Saya's operation room. The Hokage had requested the medic Nin to handle that aspect of the investigation, mainly because he wanted to keep that night's events under the eyes of the rest of the village, if only for a while. Interpret this as, until he finds the best way to use these events to his advantage. Shiki, of course, was forced to deal with a very affectionate Chen and a very wet and very pissed off Shin. They had only agreed to leave after Shiki promised twice the normal fee for their services that night. All in all, it was a very acceptable transaction, considering that the Nikomata's fee consisted only on good food and lots of petting and caressing and scratching that special spot the twins shared that turned them into identical puddles of feline goo, most of the time. Sometimes their requests were as random as they were bizarre. The Horazan male, just like before in the Hokage's office, provided the drinks for this little gathering of three. Since they needed to remain alert, sake was out of the question. "Is there anything you don't keep in those seals of yours?" Sarutobi joked as he received a warm cup of green tea. The man, despite everything that had taken place that night, actually looked younger. Decades of being close acquaintances told Shiki that something was being concocted in the old man's wise head. The flickering flame in his eyes told Shiki that this something would, at the very least, be interesting. He secretly hoped it somehow involved the old Hokage putting his political enemies in their place once and for all. He doubted it would go that far, but a man can dream. "So, Hayashi-kun, will you have tea, or maybe it is too lowly a drink for your magnificent Hyuga stomach?" Hayashi received the tea with a growl. An odd taste in his mouth obliged him to spit in a very unrefined way, disposing of a few loose short black hairs, mementos of the little scene with Chen a while before. He immediately glared at the other two men, challenging them to say anything. Sarutobi and Shiki showed identical smirks, and the great Hyuga suddenly felt himself the oldest of the three. "May I ask what amuses you so, Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi's smirk only widened as he heard the forced inflection Hayashi had added to his title. Hayashi repressed the urge to groan. It wasn't every day he dealt with the Hokage's most youthful, not in the Mato way, though, aspects of his personality, but, then again, wasn't Jiraiya, one of Sandame's students, who, in his Chunin days, dumped him in the female section of the hot springs? Hayashi sometimes, not very often, mind you, found himself remembering that scene with a very un-Hayashi-ish grin on his face and phantom pain all over his body. That was one hell of a beating he took that day. Unfortunately, it was time to discuss more serious topics. Namely, a certain blonde demon vessel. "So, Saru, I take it you've put some thought into this. What do you have in mind?" The Hokage returned Shiki's question with a serious, albeit sad, look, and a truthful answer. "I guess that depends only on Naruto, and how he will be affected by this." Hayashi nodded. It was true. They couldn't really make much planning without an input on Naruto's reaction to the events. "This is going to hit him hard," Shiki stated. Sarutobi nodded and took a rather large gulp of tea. Hayashi put some thought into that. He had to admit, losing your eyes in such a particularly gruesome way was certainly a hard blow to take. The single thought of any of his daughters going through what the little pariah had gone through made his blood boil. Truthfully, it was a harsh, horrible, and traumatizing experience. Hayashi wasn't a man who pitied others. While he didn't take the fate rants as far as his nephew Niji, not that Hayashi knew about that, though, he suffered from the same "I'm better than you" syndrome as most other Hyugas. That's why, in the presence of other people's hardships, Hayashi mostly ignored them, assuming they were getting what they deserved. He didn't know if it had been Hinata's presence, or the whole patheticness of the situation, or maybe a combination of things, or the few drops of alcohol added to the tea, but Hayashi actually felt a bit glad he had done what he did. It was the satisfaction of having done a good deed. Of course, Hayashi is still a Hyuga. The leader of the Hyugas, to be precise. The whole Good Samaritan thing didn't stop his cunning mind from looking for ways to get some gain from these latest events. At the very least, he knew his standing with the Hokage had improved, and that was always a good thing. And it was always good to improve relationships with the Horazan couple. But he knew he could do better than that. He only had to think a bit harder. How was he supposed to know he had already gained a third benefit from his maybe not so altruistic actions? And a fourth? Returning his thoughts to the blonde vessel, Hayashi tried to comment, if only to keep the flow of the conversation. He'll be alright. Sarutobi and Shiki blinked, surprised and impressed by Hayashi's choice of words. The Hyuga proceeded to explain. He was conscious when I found him, as I believe I told you. The other two nodded. That child, he is strong. I'll acknowledge that. Shiki didn't say a thing. He quietly checked Sarutobi's reaction. Hayashi, who turned away to look at the small house where Naruto currently rested, subtly activated his Byakugan to do the same. He'd have tried to check on Naruto and Itachi, but he knew the walls of the Horizon residence possessed the same seals that were used in the Hyuga compound to protect some rooms, and the privacy of those within, from their own bloodline limit, which is to be expected, since Shiki created those seals. Hayashi remembered that in his childhood the Hyuga clan used a policy of manners, saying that, if you were inside a room you were allowed to use Byakugan to look outside, but it was seen as very bad manners to, when outside, use Byakugan to see inside a closed room. The seals became necessary when it became obvious that too many Hyugas weren't above ignoring manners. When Hayashi saw the look of utmost gratitude and appreciation on the old Hokage's wrinkled face, he knew he had said the right thing. Had he possessed an inner Hayashi, the alternate ego would have exclaimed something amongst the lines of "Score one for the H-man." Oh yeah. Let us ignore the double meaning of an expression such as H-man. Besides, the Hyuga leader had already got in enough trouble when a younger Jiraiya called him that in front of females. Females with nasty right hooks. Well, you can deal with Naruto when he wakes up, I guess. Shiki concluded. But what about Dash, I know. Sarutobi interrupted. I have no intention of leaving this matter unresolved. Someone has gone too far. The spike of killing intent that flooded the space around the Hokage unwillingly made the other two men shiver. Shiki found himself needing to lighten the mood. Well, we can only hope Saya has some interesting news for us after she's done with the body. Yes. The Hokage muttered absent-mindedly. But there's something else that worries me. And what would that be? Hayashi inquired. Just what will it be of Naruto now? While it was completely unnecessary, Sarutobi added a few more words. He cannot live alone anymore. Not like this. Shiki nodded. That's true, he's going to need someone to take care of him. A sly grin invaded his face as he looked at Hayashi. How about the Hyugas? You gain a loyal child, your little daughters get a new friend, and the Branch family will probably love him. I mean, they both have unfair seals, right? It would be like the Rejects Club or something. See? Everyone's happy. Shiki's grin didn't falter under the force of Hyuga Hayashi's terrible glare. The Hyuga leader decided he didn't even need to explain why it was abysmally, absolutely, cosmically impossible for Naruto to live in the Hyuga compound. Well, the orphanage is not an option. Shiki declared. Even if they actually liked him over there, they wouldn't be able to give him the specialized attention he needs, and deserves. He needs a guide, a comforting hand, a shoulder to lean on, someone who can be his eyes until he learns to fend off by himself again. It was Hayashi's turn to smirk. My, Horizon-sama, it sounds as if you've just offered yourself. Shiki froze. Quiet. He hissed. Before Saya gets dash, what, dear? Saya chose that precise moment to appear from the depths of the earth, offering her husband a dangerous smile. What are we talking about? Much to Shiki's chagrin, Hayashi quickly took the initiative. Saya-sama, we were discussing your husband's very kind offer of watching over the young Uzumaki now that he can't live by himself. The woman with the looks of a teenager looked visibly impressed, and surprised. Oh really? Yes. Hayashi insisted. Of course, the horrified look Shiki shot at the Hyuga leader told Saya otherwise. Adjusting her robe so that it wouldn't show more than what she could allow men other than her husband to see, Saya kneeled behind Shiki, resting her head on his right shoulder and her chest against his back. "It's not such a bad idea, dear. You know I always wanted to give you children." Shiki rolled his eyes. "Thank you very much, Hayashi." Saya giggled. Hayashi nodded solemnly and sipped his cup of tea. "You are most welcome." Great tea." Sarutobi nodded in agreement with something. "The tea's quality?" Hayashi's suggestion. "Shiki, don't you remember what you promised the Yondaime Hokage?" Hayashi frowned, but his mind gloated and smirked, silently thanking whatever fate that led him to that empty street where he found Uzumaki Naruto. After that night, he just knew he'd be on an advantageous position over every other clan and family. He only had to play his cards right and let the others do the talking. He'd do the listening. And when all the other clans and families acted against Uzumaki Naruto and the Hokage, like he knew they would, Hayashi would do the good old dagger between the shoulder plates strategy and side with the Sandaime. After everything he had seen that night, he was sure the Hokage was the way to go. There would only be hell for those who even dare speak against him. And if his own clan council didn't like his idea, he always could remit them to the Lion's Den, also known as the Hokage's office, and watch the show while he looked for more, manageable replacements. Hayashi seriously considered being nicer to the Kyubi's jailer from that day onwards. His morbid and carefully contained sense of humor considered making Uzumaki Naruto an honorary Hyuga. However, before his thoughts went out of hand, he wisely chose to refocus on the conversation taking place between the Hokage and the Urazen. Shiki's expression became deadly serious, staring down at the Hokage with narrowed eyes and a flat line between his lips. "As far as I remember, Saru, the promise I made doesn't say anything about raising the brat. Besides, the conditions of the fulfillment of that promise have changed after tonight." The Hokage blinked as if he had just become aware of something, and then he looked down sadly. "Yes, you're right about that. Let's just wait until the kid wakes up. We need to know what he thinks of all this, and let's hope Hayashi-kun is right. I told you, Urazen-sama, the child is strong. You would do wrong in underestimating him. I know I won't anymore. Not after tonight." For the second time that night, Uchiha Itachi had been assigned the role of Uzumaki Naruto's caretaker. He was surprised he was granted the role after his last encounter with Lady Urazen. It was obvious that she hadn't told the others about their little face-off. Was she still willing to trust him after that? He had feared his little slip would get him in unnecessary trouble, but it didn't happen. He wouldn't go as far as to say he was ashamed, but he was definitely revising his opinion of Lady Urazen. His thoughts and emotions in check, he returned his attention to the still sleeping boy. While his now emptied eye sockets were covered with bandages, Itachi's Sharingan allowed him to notice the tension in Naruto's facial muscles. A nightmare, perhaps? Itachi muttered to himself. His Sharingan suddenly warned him of sudden spikes of chakra lashing out from the boy. His body immediately shifting to a tense, alerted pose, Itachi slowly and cautiously approached the sleeping form. Naruto's chakra seemed to be in a strange tug-of-war with a second chakra. Kyubi. Itachi correctly concluded. Surprisingly enough, Naruto's chakra seemed to envelop and overpower the demons. Itachi didn't make ridiculous assumptions. It was obvious the seal granted Naruto the extra push that allowed him to keep the Kitsune's wandering chakra in check. However, Itachi couldn't help but wonder how long would that last. The rational part of Itachi's unstable psyche secretly prayed Naruto surprised everyone with his strength and properly contained the Nine Tails. For obvious reasons, namely, age, Itachi didn't see the fight with the colossal demon fox, but, even from the Uchiha clan's underground shelters he could feel the otherworldly aura of power the monster irradiated. Itachi didn't want to see that incarnation of destruction on the loose again. As suddenly as it began, the battle of the chakras reached its end, and Uzumaki Naruto awoke with a gasp. After the darkness, came the eye. After the eye, came the light. After the light, came darkness again. Okay, that's strange. Naruto paid no heed to the lingering headache that welcomed him. He was used to waking up with a headache, may it be from lack of dinner the evening before, a nasty bump on his head or whatever. The first thing he did, a good habit born out of sheer natural instinct, was taking in his surroundings. Of course, that proved impossible for the obvious reason. He couldn't see a thing. However, his other four senses gave him plenty of information. The soft mattress he felt under him wasn't his bed. Not that his bed was bad or anything, well, it was, but it was his, so it didn't matter. This bed was soft, very soft, and bouncy, very nice. The pressure around his head told him his eyes were covered. However, his limbs weren't restrained in any way. He didn't recognize any of the scents around him, and wherever he was lacked the distinct smell of emptied instant ramen packages and dirty clothes. Uzumaki Naruto-san. Naruto froze. He wasn't alone. He was blindfolded, and there was someone there he couldn't see. Anyway, he saw it, he wasn't in a good situation. Following his acute hearing, he inched as far away from the voice as he could without falling off the bed. "Who's there?" Naruto exclaimed, trying to hide an ounce of impending fear with his mask of bravado. At the same he struggled to look for a way to get rid of the blindfold that wasn't really such. "I'd recommend you don't take off the bandages, Naruto-san." "Bandages? For my eyes?" That's when it hit him. The memories of the night before that had eluded him, as if possessing a sadistic mind of their own, struck him like an evil claw. He remembered the initial surprise, the terror, the pain and his own pleas for help and mercy. He remembered the sharp, pointy end of a kunai, and how it descended on. Itachi watched with an unfazed expression while Uzumaki Naruto dirted the immaculate bed sheets with the contents of his stomach mixed with bile and saliva. Well, at least he kept his bladder in check. "It seems you do remember, after all. Let me offer you my most sincere apologies." Naruto didn't mind Itachi's not apologetic at all voice. He had other things in his mind at the moment, like wiping off the disgusting taste of puke with his blood and mud-stained t-shirt. Wawa, he's the bastard. No, different voice, this guy's got a pretty badass voice. No, wait, what the? Where am I? Naruto demanded to know, his body haggard and his voice agitated. "I'll leave the explanations to Hokage-sama. I'm sure he wants to talk with you." "The old man? He's here?" The comfort of a familiar and trusty presence eased Naruto's nerves a little. "He is outside. If you excuse me for a minute, I'll call him." Naruto nodded. He wanted familiar company. He needed to calm down, too. Who are you, anyway?" "Uchiha, Itachi." One of the most fundamental forms of cognitive learning is word association. While, in a matter of years' time, Naruto would unconditionally associate Uchiha with that fucking Sharingan, at this point of his life he associates Uchiha with military police. Needless to say, it wasn't a good association either. A few years later, he'd admit it was a lot better than that fucking Sharingan. "Am I in trouble?" Itachi couldn't stop himself from raising an eyebrow. He definitely didn't expect that response. Not in the slightest. Naruto could only hear the sound of a door opening and closing. Itachi had left him alone with his mangled thoughts. He'd have enough time to organize them. A part of him wished he didn't. Naruto isn't precisely the smartest lad in the neighborhood, but he is no idiot either. He eventually reached the obvious conclusion, after a little experiment, of course, just in time to hear the door to his right being opened again, and several pairs of footsteps. Naruto, I'm so glad to see you are well. I'm blind. Everyone blinked. Shiki, to say the least, was amused. Well, beat around the bush, he doesn't. The newcomers easily noticed the few contents of Naruto's stomach on the bed. Saya quickly removed the bed sheets before the stench reached the mattress. Naruto's words were like a hammer that pounded on the Hokage's chest. The words themselves and the fatalistic tone Naruto had used were the last addition to a chain of regrets that had consumed the old man ever since that fateful night 7 years before. Why didn't I raise him myself? Why did I leave him to be mistreated in an overpopulated orphanage? Why didn't I take proper care of him? Why didn't I save him? However, the old Sarutobi wasn't the Hokage. For nothing. It was probably a combination of Naruto's sad fate and Shiki's morbid criticism, but Sarutobi was tired. He was tired of regretting. So, he channeled his regret in a more productive way. Anger. First and foremost, at himself, for being such a senile idiot. Second, at anyone and everyone who did as much as shooting ugly looks at Naruto. The Hokage was tired of regretting. No more regrets. Not anymore. He had a long way ahead of him to make for all the wronging inflicted upon Naruto by his inaction. He might as well start on the right foot. Hayashi and Shiki gasped, the latter louder than the former, when the third Hokage, the most powerful shinobi they had ever met, kneeled before the sitting Naruto and bowed his head in the humblest form of apology. Naruto, we are not worthy, but, in the name of my village, in the name of Konohagakure, I'm sorry, I'm so very sorry. Naruto was confused by the whole thing, not only by the Hokage's difficult voice, crying, or his words, but by the fact the Hokage's voice seemed to come from under him. Hokage-sama is kneeling and bowing in front of you, brat. Shiki stated. He is apologizing, and he expects a response. Naruto didn't even bother with this new voice, the whole situation was crazy enough as it was. In any case, the voice was right, the old man deserved an answer. Unfortunately, his age proved to be a hurdle, as Naruto didn't possess the intellect or the lexicon to come up with the proper words to use. Old man. Sarutobi raised his head, which until that moment had his forehead leaning on the wooden floor. I shouldn't have allowed that to happen. Taking care of me is my parents' job. Naruto declared with a sad smile and shrugged. They're not here, so there isn't really anyone to blame. Shiki and Saya winced. Damn, he's blunt. Naruto, I'm really sorry. Yeah, got it, old man, I'm telling you it's not your fault. You should be thinking of how you gonna make up for this. The Hokage blinked. Everyone else, but Itachi, blinked. Shiki glanced at Hayashi. Not even the Hyuga expected such a response from the blonde vessel. However, they were smart enough to see through the boy's mask. Not even Uzumaki Naruto can lose his eyes and act as if nothing had happened. The saddest thing was that, with his eyes, Naruto had also lost the ability to cry. The old Sarutobi shook his head slowly and sighed. He smiled at Naruto, forgetting for a moment that the boy couldn't see him anymore. I should have known. Don't worry, Naruto, I already have a few ideas. Damn right you do, old coot. The Hokage sighed. Naruto, would you give us a minute? Yes? Thank you. Sarutobi bowed politely and commanded the other four outside the room. He turned to the Hyuga and the Uchiha. What happened tonight is a secret between us and the other witnesses. Hayashi, I fully expect you to ensure your bodyguard's secrecy. Same for you and your ANBU squad, Itachi. Of course. Hayashi replied sternly, mildly annoyed at Sarutobi implying that he couldn't enforce obedience from lesser Hyugas. Itachi simply nodded. Secrecy was the most convenient for him. I can make this an S-rank secret punishable by death. Don't make me do it. The fierce Hokage made an additional warning. Now, Itachi, you may go back to your patrolling. Thank you for your help. His expression didn't show it, but Itachi wasn't really looking forward to going back to his boring routine. He bowed respectfully in front of the Hokage and turned to the Horazan couple. Horazan-sama, if you don't mind, may I visit Uzumaki-san at a later time? Noticing the strange expression of the married couple's faces, Itachi quickly made an excuse. With the attacker being one of my fellows, I find it necessary to extend a proper apology to Uzumaki-san. Everyone knew that was a blatant lie. Itachi couldn't reveal to Naruto that he was an ANBU, for obvious reasons. Not that the fox mask did much at hiding his identity. In any case, Itachi still didn't know a thing about the dead ANBU's motives or the causes of his death, or so they thought. However, they didn't really have a reason to deny him the right to visit Naruto. I don't really care. Shiki said matter-of-factly. Ask the nurse. Saya growled to her husband before replying. The boy needs all the support he can get right now. You're welcome to visit him anytime you want, Itachi-kun, as long as you come with the proper intentions. Itachi bowed in front of the Horazan couple. You have my thanks. Hokage-sama. Hyuga-sama. A hand seal later, Itachi had disappeared. Shiki couldn't stop himself from admiring Itachi's almost flawless shunshin. With Itachi gone, Sarutobi turned to Hayashi. I'm sure you, too, could use a few hours of sleep, Hayashi. Those words told the Hyuga leader that his role in that night's events was finished, and this time for good. However, may I share a few words with Uzumaki-san before leaving, Hokage-sama? Of course. When Hayashi closed the door behind him, he was concerned by the fact that Naruto seemed to not have noticed his entrance. The boy clutched the bed sheets with his little fists, knuckles turned white and gritted teeth showed the inner turmoil that the boy had so valiantly tried to conceal from them before. Hayashi hadn't shed a tear for 2 years, ever since his wife passed away. Sometimes, when he was alone and his thoughts drifted to blissful memories of her company, her devotion and her love, he could feel the beginning of tears forming in his eyes. He would never admit something like to anyone, of course. It was then when Hayashi understood the difference between refusing to cry and not being able to. There is a reason people cry, after all. There must be a lot in your mind right now, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's head jerked in the direction of his voice. Even without his eyes to express emotion, Hayashi could tell Naruto had recognized his voice by the way his initially alarmed expression quickly relaxed and turned into a bitter smile. Ah, it's you. Naruto's words confirmed Hayashi's suspicion. He made an effort to ignore the boy's lack of proper manners when addressing an elder. In fact, he thought it was commendable the boy actually remembered his voice. Naruto awkwardly scratched the back of his head under the bandages. Looks like I do have a debt with you, sir. Who are you? Hayashi twitched. Hyuga Hayashi. Naruto frowned, but his expression quickly relaxed when he noticed that frowning intensified his annoying headache. That name, I'm sure I've heard that name before, but... Hayashi's pulsating vein on his forehead grew as he watched Naruto shift through all sorts of thoughtful positions and expressions. The Hyuga swallowed his pride and decided to let go of the fact that the blonde brat in front of him didn't know the name of the most important figure in the most important family in Konoha. On his part, Naruto finally gave up trying to remember. Oh, whatever. Don't worry, Mr. H. Insert Hayashi twitch here. Uzumaki Naruto pays his debts. I don't know how, I don't know when, but consider it done. It's a promise. Hayashi expression relaxed, a little, after that. He considered himself fortunate that he wouldn't have to bring the topic himself. Naruto could hear Hayashi's approaching steps and he felt Hayashi's weight as he sat on the bed by his right side. That is good to know, child. I'll be looking forward to it. Don't make me regret helping you. Naruto found himself smiling despite everything. Hey, I like you, Mr. H. You're kinda cool. Hayashi's twitch returned in all its pulsating glory. The few children he occasionally interacted with would never call him Mr. H, and would never tell him he was kinda cool. Is that so? That was when Naruto figured out he was talking to a complete stranger, whose face he couldn't even see. His saccharine grin became a sheepish and slightly embarrassed smile. Yeah, so, where am I, anyway? I think Hokage-sama will do a better job explaining things than me. Geez. That Itachi guy didn't want to tell me a thing either. Why is everyone being so damn secrety? Hayashi figured out Naruto was trying to say secretive. You are in good hands, Uzumaki-san. Now I'll take my leave, and Hokage-sama will tell you everything you might want to know. He said as he stood up to leave. Okay. Hayashi was intrigued by Naruto's voice and expression. Was he disappointed? Only Kami knows why Hayashi did what he did next. We only know that he did, and it was the best thing he could have done that night, besides finding Naruto, of course. Naruto's body stiffened when he felt a hand on his head. Naruto wasn't familiarized with non-forceful, non-aggressive human contact. As for Hayashi, he was doing something he remembered doing occasionally for his daughter in her earliest years. He remembered Hinata seemed to enjoy it. I am under the impression that you are strong, Uzumaki-san. I believe you are strong, and I have shared this opinion with the others. He said while he gently ruffled Naruto's spiky blonde hair. Do not disappoint me. Before Naruto could react in any way, Hayashi was gone. And that's how it happened. Before a little short-haired girl with lavender eyes, before a Chunin teacher at the academy, before a Jounin sensei and a Genin team, Uzumaki Naruto was acknowledged by the leader of the greatest clan in Konoha. With that rather bland gesture of affection, which for Hayashi wasn't even such, of course, the Hyuga and the Uzumaki sealed an unconscious agreement. Hayashi didn't know it yet, but, because of that single action, Uzumaki Naruto would become the starkest protector of the Hyuga clan. Of course, there would be other things that would reinforce Naruto's allegiance to the clan, namely one Hyuga Hinata, one Hyuga Neji, one Hyuga Hanabi and one caged bird, cursed seal, not necessarily in that order of importance, but Hayashi's actions that night would be the beginning of it all. The clan leader didn't know it yet, but, by taking an alternate route home that night, he had truly hit the jackpot. Naruto's little chat with Hayashi had done wonders with his overall mood, true, but that didn't change the fact that, well, he was blind. That was a pretty bad bummer. That's why, when the Hokage and the Urazen couple entered the room a few minutes later, Naruto was again possessed by apathy. Saya decided to take the initiative because she has something the other two lack, maternal instinct. Hello, Naruto. My name is Urazen Saya. You can call me Saya. I'm not really a medic nin, but I've been taking care of you. Naruto followed the voice as the woman walked around the bed and approached him from his left. He also heard footsteps from the right. He labeled the voice as that of a young woman. He had lots of questions in his head, so he decided to go with the one on top of the pile. What's a medic nin? Saya laughed. It was a beautiful laughter that reminded him of birds singing. On a side note, from that point onwards, he'd always associate birds chirping with Saya's laughter, not some nails on a blackboard Raiton jutsu. As beautiful Saya's laughter might be, it didn't help him feel any less embarrassed. People, other than the old Hokage, always ignored his questions, and pretty much everything else he said. A medic nin is a ninja who has specialized in healing techniques and medical treatment in general, aiding other ninja in preventing harm from befalling them. Cool. While Naruto was honestly interested in Saya's answer, he was more interested in figuring out why the woman had actually answered his question. Hadn't she laughed at him a second ago? Shiki, who was even better at reading people than Saya, answered Naruto's unasked question. Kid, do not fear asking questions. Never. There is no question that doesn't deserve to be answered. The only stupid questions you can make are those whose answer you already know. My wife wasn't laughing at you, she just didn't expect you to ask her that of all things. Then why doesn't anyone else want to answer my questions? The third Hokage bit his lip. It seemed like a minute couldn't pass without him being reminded of the unfair circumstances of Naruto's life so far. Not anymore. He promised himself. Thankfully, Saya had the best answer to Naruto's question. Isn't it obvious? Because they're jerks. Naruto nodded in understanding, as if Saya had just revealed the mysteries of the universe. Wherever he was, he liked the place. Whoever these people were, they seemed decent. However, he didn't fail to notice an intriguing detail. Wait, wife? Yes. I am Horazen Shiki, Saya's husband. I am honored to meet you, Uzumaki Naruto. Sure, nice to meet you, wait, wife. Shiki's eyes narrowed. Is it that hard to believe? He muttered, ignoring Saya's giggles and the Hokage's smirk. But. Aren't you, too young for that? Aren't you too young to know about marriage, anyway? Mariug? What's that? Shiki groaned. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. Remind me to tell you about marriage some other time. The point is, Saya is my wife. We're married. We live together. Here. This is our house. We're in the guest room. Got it? Naruto grumbled. Okay, but you didn't answer my question. Shiki twitched. A Kekii Genkai. It's a Kekii Genkai that makes his opponents extremely annoyed. It has to be. It's not a Dojutsu, so, some kind of pheromone? Saya and I are much older than we look, or sound. I'd tell you more, but we have other, more important matters at hand. You know, you can just tell me you don't want to answer. Shiki slapped his forehead. Sarutobi, please. Naruto. A visibly amused Hokage made his presence known to the blind blonde. Ah, old man. You're here, too. Naruto leaned closer to the right edge of the bed. Seriously, what's the deal with this guy? He whispered in a conspiratorial voice, pointing with his right thumb in the direction he inferred Shiki was standing. So now I'm this guy. There. Saya comforted her husband with a mocking voice. The Hokage chuckled. Naruto, Shiki, and Saya are good friends of mine, and, yes, they are married. In fact, this might surprise you, but they are actually older than me. Naruto had to pick his jaw up. What? But. He turned back to Saya. She doesn't sound like an old hag. Shiki winced. Calling his wife old, big mistake. Call me that again and I'll make you pee your brains out, brat. Saya growled, and Naruto promptly gulped. Her voice reminded him of that woman he guided to a back alley behind a fancy restaurant where a man she apparently knew was doing something, wrestling, with some teenage girl who thought a few loose pieces of cloth over her chest and around her waist made for good clothing. Okay. Scary. Saya's voice immediately changed back to its usual sickly sweet mode. Great. Naruto shivered and sweat dropped. Can we focus on the matter at hand, please? Shiki complained with an accompanying groan. What's the problem? Saya shrugged. Naruto's asking questions and we're answering them. Isn't that what we intended to do? Alright, I give up. Shiki gave up. The Hokage sat on the bed like Hayashi had done minutes before. How are you feeling, Naruto? Unfortunately, something in the old man's voice completely drained the room of the light mood they had created so far. Naruto offered the Hokage his best sad smile. He really felt like crap, but he didn't want the old man to keep blaming himself. My head hurts, and, well, I can't see. The Hokage sighed. It had been a stupid question, after all. I guess you'd like to know what happened, Naruto? Old man, Naruto was measuring his words with a teaspoon. I kinda already know what happened, you know. Sarutobi couldn't stop himself from smirking. Of course you do, Naruto. That was another stupid question from my part. I'm very sorry. No problem, Naruto lowered his head. Unable to look at anything, he didn't know where to look at. The person. He's dead. Saya interrupted, answering Naruto's unfinished question. He was found dead not too far from where Hayashi-kun found you. Under his bandages, Naruto blinked. Why? How? Did you? No, I didn't kill him. Saya explained, visibly amused by how he winced at the word kill, even if she could only see the muscles of his forehead shifting. We still don't know how or why he died, but I'll find out soon. Just rest assured that the bastard got what he deserved. Naruto certainly didn't look very assured. Probably because he had something else in his mind. What is it, Naruto? The Hokage buried himself by opening his mouth. Why? Several hours later, Naruto couldn't sleep. He had been unconscious for hours. He had absolutely no desire to rest. He felt perfectly fine, even the headache that had assaulted him when he awakened had finally disappeared. The only problem left was his blindness. It was hard to come to terms with the fact that he wouldn't be able to see a thing ever again. It was terrifying. He knew sunrise was still an hour or two away, at least that's what the girl, he just couldn't picture her as the old woman the Hokage had said she was, had told him a few minutes before. He knew it was dark, but he just couldn't tell. Day and night had lost their meaning. Everything was darkness. The Hokage had retired to, at least, get a few hours of sleep. He had promised to visit as soon as he could later that day. The highlights of their conversation before he left remained fresh in Naruto's head. Why? Who do these things happen to me? Why does everyone hate me? Aji-san. Why won't you tell me? As always, the old man had evaded the questions with a string of half-truths and words of encouragement, saying that no reason justifies what had happened to him and things like that. Naruto truly liked the old Sandame, but sometimes he wished he were older, bigger and stronger so he could kick the old man's wrinkled ass. Even he, a 7-year-old, could tell the old Hokage was hiding things from him. Naruto knew the old man knew why everyone treated him like crap. The same thing happened when Naruto asked him about his parents. Like every other orphan, Naruto wanted to know about his progenitors. He wanted to know why they weren't there to love him, raise him and protect him. Every single time he asked, Sarutobi would dodge the question. Seriously, there is a limit to good intentions. Naruto could feel Saya's presence to his left. She had moved a seat to the bedside. Unlike the Hokage, the Horizon couple claimed that they could manage a sleepless night. They obviously intended to stay with Naruto at least until he finally decided to get some sleep. Yeah, right, sleep. Keep dreaming. Saya had already changed the sheets. Naruto had offered to help her, in the process proving that he had recovered enough to stand up and walk. While his aid ended up being more of a hindrance than anything else, having to work with his tact only, Saya had the patience of a saint and the two worked together until the job was done. Currently, Naruto was seated on the bed, thinking and feeling bored as hell. Saya-nichan? Saya looked up from her lecture, a gift from the Sannin Jiraiya, the first draft of his upcoming first novel, Aika Aika Paradise. Yes? is Shiki-san around? I'm here, kid. Shiki announced his presence from the desk he was working at. Naruto tracked his voice to the 10 o'clock direction. Silence followed. Saya returned to her book, Shiki returned to whatever he was working on, probably yet another seal. It didn't take Naruto long to lose his patience. Sayane-chan? Yes? The woman immediately replied, apparently undisturbed by Naruto's insistence. Do you know my parents? Shiki shot a sharp look at his wife. His face saying everything that needed to be said, measure your words, Saya. Yes, I do. And no, I won't tell you about them. Naruto immediately jumped on his knees. What? Why? Saya offered a compassionate look Naruto couldn't see. Because there is a reason you cannot know about your parents, Naruto. It isn't just old Saru's whim. There are very important, secret reasons nobody can tell you about them. I can only imagine how difficult it is for you, and I can only apologize. I'm really sorry, Naruto. Naruto felt his heart break one more time. It was a feeling he was painfully used to, but his natural kindness didn't allow him to feel angry or hate Saya. He could feel the honesty in her voice. It's okay, I guess. He muttered. If he still had eyes, Saya would have been bombarded with the most tear-jerking supplicant face Naruto could muster. Of course, if he still had eyes, he would be crying. The woman couldn't stop herself. The boy in front of her had suffered far more than most people 5 times his age. She didn't want to be one to add to that suffering. She had to, at least, offer him a possibility. However, Naruto, nothing stops you from finding the truth by your own means. When she was sure she had caught the boy's attention, she continued. The answers you want are somewhere out there, Naruto. If you grow stronger and wiser you will find the path to those answers, I assure you. Not even Saya's words and Naruto's unyielding determination helped him against the waves of uncertainty that ravaged his future cloaked in eternal darkness. But, what can I do? I. The weight of Naruto's blindness finally descended on him like the death god's blade. What am I gonna do now? Saya felt the desperation and despair that flowed out of Naruto. It pained her that such emotions could come from such a young life, who should be looking forward to an entire life ahead, instead of feeling and acting as if his life were already over. Once again, her thought-to-be-dead maternal instinct kicked in, and she hurried to console the devastated youngling, climbing on the bed and wrapping her arms around him from behind, offering him her shoulder and her chest for him to lean on. Unable to create tears, Naruto could only sigh sadly and return the embrace with surprising strength coming from such little and thin arms. Saya eyed her husband smugly. Jealous? Naruto snorted. Couldn't those two be serious for a minute? Was he, Uzumaki Naruto, complaining about lack of seriousness? Shiki smiled lovingly at his wife. A little. Now, kid. He called for Naruto's attention. What did you want to do? What were your plans, before all this happened? Uzumaki Naruto is, surprisingly enough, a hopeless optimist, despite having lived such a depressing past. It is precisely because of this that Naruto enjoys talking about the future, to the point that the mantle of sadness that had wrapped itself around him was ripped apart by the surge of emotion that possessed the boy in that moment. Saya was simply stunned by the ease with which Naruto could change from depressed to little bundle of enthusiasm. A kick-ass ninja. A kick-ass ninja that everyone would know and respect. The best ninja in Konohano. The world's best ninja. Then again, Naruto's energy suddenly disappeared like a disrupted jutsu, and his face once again donned the mask of depression. Saya concluded that the kid's mind was a wreck. They had to do something about that, and soon. I wanted to be ninja. Why? Shiki inquired. Why a ninja? Because. Naruto stammered, something he had been doing a little too often that night. Ninjas are cool, and strong. I'd be all kick-ass, and nobody would be bad with me. I know they'd probably still hate me for no reason and stuff, but, at least, I'd feel fine, with myself, I think, and maybe, they'd respect me. If I did good things, cool things, they wouldn't ignore me. So, what you want is acknowledgement. Akno, what's that? Shiki smiled. Conversing with children was so troublesome. Acknowledgement. You want others to recognize you. You want others to know who you are, and respect you for that. You want people to say, hey, that's Uzumaki Naruto, not, hey, it's the demon brat. Am I right? Naruto nodded eagerly. Yeah. Then why a shinobi? Why not anything else? You can be acknowledged if you're good at whatever you do, no matter what it is. Naruto, who had already let go of Saya, who still held him from behind, scratched the tip of his shin with his right index finger, in what would be known by those who became acquainted with him as the Naruto thinking pose. It only took him a few seconds to come up with an answer. What else can I do? No one would give me a job. I want to be a ninja. Ninjas are strong, and I want to be strong. And it's the only thing I could be, so there. While Saya gently caressed his hair with her left hand and Naruto decided that he liked the feeling, even if her body felt kinda cold, Shiki digested Naruto's words. He was surprised by the amount of thought Naruto had put into his future, but he also understood it was to be expected. The future is the only thing Naruto could look forward to. And Naruto is still a child, and it's normal for children to have big dreams. And, as pathetic as it may sound, he is right. Nobody would give the demon brat a job, except maybe that ramen stand Sara told me about. As for his reasons to be a ninja, well, he is a child, and I've heard worse. But now. Naruto muttered sadly, his shoulders shaking, and his brain sending instructions to shed tears his body couldn't release. What am I gonna do now? I can't be a ninja anymore, I can't be nothing anymore. Shiki didn't even notice Naruto's grammatical wreck. Why not? Naruto would have rolled his eyes if he could. His muscles did the motion. Well, duh. I can't see shit. Shiki only narrowed his eyes, preferring to refrain from warning Naruto to watch his language. He only tolerated his wife saying, fuck all the time because he loves her too much. He could always warn Naruto later. There were more important things in Shiki's mind at the moment. Namely, making sure Naruto didn't become a depressing bundle of emo-ness. How the heck can I be a ninja if I can't see a thing? Why not? Naruto moved his head to face Shiki's probable direction. Noticing the obvious lack of understanding, Shiki explained as best as he could. You have lost your eyes, Naruto, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are blind. I feel very blind right now. Oh, great, he's discovered sarcasm. Brat, what I mean is, ninja are capable of all kinds of unbelievable feats. Ninja can summon all sorts of supernatural creatures, they can heal all but the nastiest wounds and cure all but the most extreme and rare illnesses, they can move at speeds faster than the normal eye, they can use jutsu that can level entire forests and reshape the landscape. Compared to that, a ninja that can do his job even when blind doesn't seem too far-fetched. Ninja can do all that stuff? Cool. Shiki sighed. They'd have to work on Naruto's attention span, too. The point is, Naruto, becoming a ninja even when blind is not impossible. Far from it, I'd say. Had you been born blind then it might have been impossible but, in your case, there's still hope. Lots of hope, considering your natural talent. Talent? Yes, Naruto, talent. You are talented, brat, and I don't say that often. You can become a decent shinobi, if you feel like it. It is true that Naruto just underwent a terrible and scarring experience. Of course, we're talking about Naruto here. He's the kind of person that will eventually see nothing but the good consequences of his tragedy. He had been acknowledged by Hayashi. He didn't know what to make of Itachi, but the Uchiha at least had yet to insult him or belittle him in any way. The old man had always been nice to him, with all his mistakes. The girl, Saya, had treated his wounds and comforted him with kind words and a tender hug. And now this guy, Shiki, was saying that he had what it takes to be a ninja, even with his new disability. At what cost? A pair of eyes. Naruto wouldn't go as far as to say, good riddance, but he wouldn't dwell on the loss for too long either. Naruto was, is, and will always be a person that faces things as they come. So he lost his eyes. Sure, there was the normal initial depression. Once that is done and over with, he faces the future with unbreakable resolve. That is what makes Naruto Naruto. So, what do I have to do? Any trace of depression or sadness suddenly gone, a disturbingly excited Naruto asked Shiki with a look that, had he still had his eyes, would have been described as a look of adoration. Do you still want to be a ninja? Of course. Ninjas are badass. Blind ninjas must be super badass. I want to be super badass. Saya giggled at Naruto's childish antics. Shiki was particularly amused, too. Well, that's an interesting use of syllogism. Super badass. Like Mr. H. A long silence followed. Mr. H? Shiki mentally did a quick review of every person Naruto knew and would probably label as badass. The conclusion was obvious. You mean, Hayashi? Naruto nodded eagerly. The silence prolonged itself a few more seconds. A minute later, a confused Naruto demanded to know what was so funny, his words reaching deaf ears as the Horizon couple laughed like they hadn't laughed in decades. 20 or so minutes later, after Naruto had finally agreed to rest for an hour or two, sunrise wasn't too far away, anyway. Shiki and Saya engaged in one last conversation before succumbing to the most blissful pleasures of sleep, probably not much longer than an hour, though, Saya's earlier intentions of engaging in long rounds of sex long forgotten. It had taken a promise to start their badass blind ninja training right after breakfast for Naruto to settle down and sleep. Saya's subtle tapping of specific pressure point had helped, too. So, dear, when did you change your mind? She said as she snuggled as close to her husband as possible. The couple shared the habit of sleeping in their underwear. Saya always said that brasiers were one of mankind's greatest inventions. Shiki always wondered what she meant by that. Not being a woman, he couldn't possibly understand. About what? About taking care of Naruto. Shiki pretended to be thinking. With the lights out, his eyes closed and the feel of Saya's skin against his, it would be long before sleep claimed him. Well, I made a promise to the fourth. Of course, had Naruto chosen to not become a shinobi, the terms of my promise would have been rendered null and void, but lending a hand to the kid might prove to be useful. Such cold and harsh words. Saya said with a mocking tone. Shiki smiled mischievously and gently caressed Saya's lips with a finger, every once in a while dodging her attempts at engulfing it. You know I wanted him to be my successor. The fourth, I mean. The lad had everything, talent, cunning, the habit of thinking outside the box. He would have become the greatest. The Sannin, Sarutobi, he would have stood above them all. He was already well on his way. So you intend to convert Naruto into the new Yondaime? Hell no. It took Shiki a while to figure out Saya was expecting him to say more. I'll help Naruto become whatever he wants to become. Whatever it is, I'll try to make him the best at that. And if he chooses to study Fuinjutsu you won't complain, will you? Of course not. I told you, I'm looking for a successor. Which brings me back to the question, why him? First of all, he's a Jinchuriki. That already puts him a notch above the average prospect. But, most importantly, he has what it takes, Saya. He has motivation. The kid wants to become as great as he possibly can. He has the talent. If what you said it's true, his body works at its maximum potential, and with his chakra capacity he could do things even Kage-level shinobi could only dream of. He has wisdom, the kind of wisdom you only gain by facing the cold, harsh reality, wisdom born of pain and struggling, like you and I struggled in our youth. And, most of all, he knows there's not easy, fast way to success, yet he is ready to do what it takes. He is blind, but he's willing to work, he's willing to train to jump that hurdle. He'll have to work 10 times harder than any other shinobi aspirant, and the damn brat is looking forward to it. Not even the other dumb blonde was so damn enthusiastic. Naruto is top-quality shinobi material, Saya, and Konoha has been too stupid, too blind and too obnoxious to notice it. Well, guess what? I'm neither. How can you expect me to not want to mold that rough diamond into the most magnificent jewel? It will be my last and greatest project. Last project? Saya looked up at her husband's face. His eyes shone with an enthusiasm he only revealed during their love-making. Yes, Saya dearest, our last project. If there's someone who can do what needs to be done, it's that kid. After the appropriate preparation, of course. And when that is done and over with, we'll cease to exist. They remained quiet for a minute, the two lost in thoughts of their own. They thought about their long-overdue final death, wondering just how it would feel like. They thought about the kid sleeping in the neighboring room, while they quietly deposited their hopes and expectations on him. They would help him become the shinobi he wanted to be, and in return he would grant them closure. Closure and freedom. Saya sighed and purred as her husband toyed with and caressed her hair, like he often did with his precious Nikomata. Uzumaki Naruto, I guess we'll have to be used to having a child around. Well, you did say you wanted to give me children. Shiki said softly with a sly grin. But you know I like our privacy, Shiki, dear. Saya purred. Then you'll just have to try to be a bit quieter at night. Easier said than done. Oh, for Kami's sake, Saya. Well, I can't help it, I'm a screamer. If the kid hears, wait, don't we have privacy seals in this bedroom, anyway? After a 6 seconds pause, Shiki's grin became a devilish smirk. Got you. Saya frowned, then gasped, then groaned, and then pouted. Pervert. She muttered before relaxed again in his embrace. Saya, you, too, should start thinking about finding a successor. Saya frowned. I already have a successor, Tsunade, remember? Tsunade took your theories and made them her own. I'm talking about your taijutsu. Guy is good and everything, but I don't think he's up to learning all of your styles. It was Saya's turn to grin. No need to worry about it. I already have someone in mind. Really? Who? Did you forget I, too, made a promise to someone? Shiki frowned and thought for a second before his eyes widened in recognition. Oh, ugh. Sarutobi had gone straight to the point the moment Horizon Shiki sat down on a chair across his desk, a few minutes before sunrise in the Hokage Tower. So, my old friend, what are your plans for Naruto? A grin crept up slowly on Shiki's face. So you figured it out. You hurt me, Shiki. I happen to be the Hokage. Yes, sometimes I seem to forget you are one of the world's greatest shinobi. Thank you, bastard. Now, talk. Shiki shrugged. While most people would be eager to comply after hearing the Hokage's authoritative tone, Shiki couldn't possibly care less. Saya will work on his perception and awareness, as well as his physical training. Hopefully he'll be able to hone his kinesthetic sense. We're also considering echolocation. Sarutobi nodded. He believed he remembered instances of blind people developing natural forms of echolocation all by themselves. Does she intend to teach him taijutsu? Don't think so. At least not before he learns the basics at the academy. You too could teach him everything he would learn at the academy and more. The Hyugas could do the same with their children. So could the Uchihas or any other decent family with a shinobi tradition. Yet they still send their children to the academy, and it's not because of the quality of its education or the compulsory genin test. You know I hate stupid questions, Saru. The Hokage nodded again. He had only wanted to know Shiki's opinion. The principal argument for the existence of the Konoha Shinobi Academy was the need for the shinobi in training to interact with their future teammates in a controlled environment and to develop normal bonds of friendship with them, effectively reinforcing the conception of Konohagakure as one big family that lives together and fights together. After all, it was that union and sense of loyalty, identity, and belonging that made Konoha so strong. Sarutobi knew of this intrinsic mission of the academy because he had imposed it himself. Of course, that didn't mean he was relegating actual ninja training as a secondary objective. The students were supposed to learn the absolute basics, after all. From that, their eventual jounin teachers and families would handle the rest. In fact, most of the things ninja learned in their careers was self-taught or learned the worst and most painful way possible, in the middle of the everyday struggle for survival. You told me about Saya. What about you? The Hokage insisted. I'll teach him how to use chakra, and I'll help him develop a jutsu that replaces his lost sight. Sarutobi frowned, openly expressing his disbelief. You are telling me you are expecting a 7-year-old with only the minimum knowledge of chakra to create a perception jutsu? That would be, what, B rank? At least. I'll play it safe and say A rank. You are joking. Not in the slightest, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi rubbed his temples. The last thing he needed was a headache so early. Shiki tilted his head and pulled 2 scrolls from his vest. You didn't have breakfast, did you, old monkey? Sarutobi growled. Shiki smiled and made a hand seal. A tray of steaming meat buns and a metallic gray bottle appeared on top of the scroll Shiki had unrolled on the Hokage's desk. Neither did I. The seal master declared before summoning 2 cups and filling them with iced tea from the gray bottle. Remind me why Fuinjutsu isn't taught in the academy, Shiki. Sarutobi muttered while he picked a meat bun with almost childish glee. Shiki knew his friend had said that as some sort of amusing comment, but he felt like answering anyway. For the same reason medicnines are so rare, Saru. Because seals demand serious study, almost undivided devotion and a complete and extensive knowledge of the theories involved combined with cunning intellect, creativity and lots of intuition. That's why most shinobi only bother with weapon storage seals. Most of those so-called seal masters rarely use their seals in combat, except for weapon seals, of course. Not even Jiraiya. Tsunade's knowledge of seals is very specific, and Orochimaru. The Sandaime Hokage looked at somewhere far away. He was quite versed in Orochimaru's use of seals. But he had to admit Shiki made a very valid point. Other than weapon seals, he didn't know many other applications of Fuinjutsu in ordinary combat, which explained why most shinobi versed in seals were also weapon specialists. His successor, the 4th Hokage, had come up with Hiraishin no Jutsu, the single technique that built his reputation as the yellow flash of Konoha and the object of Iwagakure's hatred. Horaizan Shiki rarely used anything other than seals, in the extremely rare occasion Sarutobi had seen him fight at all, and the old Hokage had learned to admire, acknowledge and, to a certain point, fear Shiki's Horaizan Mugen Kekai. The combination of sealing techniques, barrier techniques and ranged weaponry Shiki had developed and mastered for use in actual battle situations was, in lack of a better word, scary. Sarutobi had defeated it ages ago. True, and he was very confident he could beat anything Shiki threw at him, but that didn't mean he'd like to face it again. What about Naruto? Will you teach him Fuinjutsu? Only if he wants to. And you want me to believe you won't influence his thoughts in any way that might lead to instill a desire for learning Fuinjutsu. Shiki smirked almost evilly. What makes you think I can convince you of anything, old monkey? Ah, so true, so true. This was a usual conversation between these two. What could be a 1-minute dialogue took 10 times longer with the two going on all sorts of absurd tangents. Anyway, Shiki, about this perception jutsu, what do you have in mind? The Hokage eventually dragged the conversation back to its original topic. They didn't have much time. Well, that pretty much depends on his elemental affinity. If he's a fire, we'll have to work with body heat. If he's a lightning, electric and magnetic fields. If he's an earth, tremor sense. If he's a wind, then he's ridiculously lucky. Why? Wind temperature, wind speed, mechanical waves, all those things can aid in perception, and we could combine them into a single omniperception jutsu. Nowhere near as good as a Dojutsu, but very good nonetheless. And you think Naruto can pull it off? We have time, and the boy's got spirit. I can tell his mind is still a wreck because of the whole ordeal, but he's looking forward to training, and training might be what he needs to get over the shock. Also, he gets to stay away from the people that hate him, and Saya is fond of the brat. She never got over the unable to have children thing. Sarutobi had gotten used to the Horizon couple's quirks and habits a long time ago. Their ways of speech, their gestures, and their attitude at times were completely random. Sometimes they acted their age and behaved like the respected elders they are supposed to be, mostly when it was convenient to them. Sometimes they behaved like teenagers. It was as if their actual age and their apparent age clashed and collided, creating an unstable personality. Sarutobi had figured out a long time ago that not everything was right in the heads of those two. Alright. Go for it. If you can really help Naruto somehow make it through this, I'll be more than happy to help you in any way I can. I'll need permission to get Naruto's possessions. Yes, that won't be a problem. I'll handle the paperwork, it's not much that needs to be done, in any case. Shiki offered a rare kind smile to his younger friend. You really want to make it up to the brat, don't you? Yes, and I have every intention to. Shiki nodded and finished his cup of tea. Good. I take it the council will have to be informed of your intentions? The Hokage's expression immediately changed. Yes, and that's why I called you here so early, my good friend. Shiki narrowed his eyes. There it was again. The old grandfather of Konoha was gone. The cranky, moody, sometimes impatient old man was gone. The man Saya once called one of the few perverts I can't beat the crap out of didn't exist. His wrinkles had changed from marks of age to symbols of wisdom, knowledge, cunning, power and triumph, wore scars that symbolized the many obstacles he had crushed and the fact he had survived 6 decades and still going. Time wasn't kind to him, but his eyes still reminded Shiki of that loud, bratty, vulgar but incredibly cunning young lad. The first and the second turned into one of the greatest shinobi in history. The flame that had apparently disappeared from those eyes the day Kyubi was sealed had returned with a vengeance. It wasn't about Konoha anymore. Paperwork was still boring. Assigning missions was still boring. Meeting with the clans was still boring. No, it wasn't about Konoha anymore. It was about a young blonde with a wondrous smile that had been broken forever. Without his beautiful cerulean eyes, it just would never be the same anymore. It was about a young orphan who had been cursed with a life he didn't deserve, a boy he had been unable to protect. It was about that boy and, by extension, about the future generations of Konoha. He couldn't do anything about the current and past generations anymore, and he had no intention to. The clans and families were lost to him. No matter what he did, the Hyugas would still be haughty. There seemed to be hope for Hayashi, though. The Uchihas would be pretentious bastards. The Aburames would be those bug freaks in everyone's eyes, the Nara would be lazy, and, almost, everyone would hate Uzumaki Naruto. But, if he could at least ensure a decent future for that demon vessel, if he could sow seeds of union and loyalty among the new generation, Naruto's generation, if he could at least guide them on their first steps through a path of righteous growth and loyalty to the ideals of the Leaf Village, then he would have succeeded. He would die in peace. Konoha is just a name, just a city. Cities can be rebuilt. Konoha is not what I protect. The words of the fourth ringed clearly in Sarutobi's head. At long last, the old Hokage understood what the other dumb blonde truly meant. The fourth was gone. The third didn't have much time left either. He might not have a candidate for Godame yet, but he could at least make sure his legacy, ideals and dreams lived on. Just for that, the professor, the god of Shinobi, would arise one more time. Shiki, can I ask you a question? Shiki released a breath he didn't even know he had been holding. It wasn't the first time he had experienced the pressure of Sarutobi's presence, but he hadn't felt it with such strength since at least 7 years before. He had to admit he was impressed. It wasn't genjutsu, or what some called killing intent, or any other psychological trick. It was pure, undiluted presence, charisma in its most raw form. It was another reason Sarutobi was vastly stronger than him. With that sort of presence, the old Sandaime could end most battles before they even began. Shiki was simply incapable of doing that. Geez, Saru, you've asked me thousands of questions since the day we met. What's stopping you now? It's called manners, my friend. Unlike you, I haven't forgotten you are my elder. Stop it, monkey, you are making me feel my age. It's not nice. Just ask away. Sarutobi nodded. He didn't want to. Imagine how it would feel to be as old as Shiki was. Why are you helping Naruto? And I mean the real reason. I know you, and you are not doing it out of the kindness of your heart, or to sate Saya's motherly instincts. Shiki lowered his head. Now you really are making me feel my age, Saru. Saru, I'm doing it for almost the same reasons you are. Explain yourself. Shiki nodded and raised his head to look at the Hokage in the eyes, to show he was being completely honest. First, there's that stupid promise I made to that blonde idiot, the fourth. That doesn't mean anything. Sarutobi interrupted rather harshly. You said it yourself, with Naruto's loss of his sight, you could have forgotten all about him and the promise. True. Which leads to my other reason. I'm running out of time, Saru. Shiki explained before the Hokage could open his mouth to ask. While the contract that binds me to this world does not have a time limit, my body does. I've simply lived much longer than this body can handle. At long last, I'm dying, my friend. Sarutobi nodded, but his expression was grim. Even for someone as long-lived as Shiki, death was a fearsome thing. How much longer, Shiki? 20, 30 years, tops. Well, at least you'll still be able to attend to my funeral. Both men chuckled bitterly. In any case, there are a few, unfinished businesses I'd like to deal with before my time comes. Unfortunately, because of the rules, I need a proxy to aid me with some of them. Orochimaru? Shiki sighed sadly. He knew how painful it was for the old teacher of the Sannin. Yes, Orochimaru is one of them. So, you're telling me you are going to train Naruto to kill Orochimaru? Among other things. What kind of things? Shiki smiled slyly. Secret things. Sarutobi cursed under his breath. So. He seemed to be chewing the word. Any other reason you'd like to share with me? Well, there is another reason, a more selfish one. The Hokage only raised an eyebrow, to which Shiki replied. The Urazen family techniques. The Urazen name will die with me and Saya. I don't want the same thing to happen to my jutsu. You know I intended to give them to the fourth. He was the only one with the skill and the knowledge to learn my most special techniques. So you want to make Naruto your successor? Shiki nodded. I'd be insane to give them to anyone from any village's shinobi clans, and my jutsu aren't Jiraiya's thing. If there isn't an appropriate heir, why not making one? So you do intend to teach him Fuinjutsu? Only if he wants to. And you'll make him want to. Precisely. Sarutobi chuckled. Horizon Shiki always gets what he wants, doesn't he? I've only wanted two things in my life, Saya, and a long, fulfilling life, and I was blessed with both, or cursed, I'm not sure anymore. Is it so wrong to ask for a third thing? The old Hokage shook his head. No, my friend, not at all. I'm grateful you want to teach Naruto your art. You're only glad it's not going to end in another village. I won't lie to you, Shiki. You're supposed to say something else after that, Saru. Both men chuckled together one more time. What about Saya? Saya would probably outlive me, she has a stronger body. You said would. Shiki smiled. It was one of those rare smiles Sarutobi had seen only rarely. I love you. Saya exclaimed between sobs. When you die, I die with you. That's what she said. I guess that's Saya for you. Shiki blushed, surprising Sarutobi one more time. Yes, I guess. Does she have plans of her own? Of course. Shiki declared, making sure to let the other know he wasn't going to say another word. With that, the Hokage's expression returned to his calm, stern and penetrating gaze. Back to business. Very well, then. Listen well, Shiki, this is my plan. When the first ray of sunshine passed through her bedroom's lone window, Hyuga Hinata woke up. The Hyugas are a clan of early birds, and Hinata, as the heiress, had to be the epitome of earliness. She didn't mind, though. If anything, it was one of the few things she actually enjoyed about being the heiress. Yes, Hinata likes to wake up early. She liked it even more that day. The reason? Hinata had changed, or at least she had decided to change, and they say the first step to change is to find the will to do so. Her mind is the only place where she can be completely honest, and her honest thought is that she does not like being the heiress. Most of the lessons are uninteresting. Not that she's bad at them, though, but, honestly, most of the things they try to teach her are way over her head. She was sure she had more random knowledge in her head than any other child her age. She was definitely sure her lexicon was 10 times greater than any normal 6-year-old child's. She was absolutely sure no other child her age even knew the word lexicon. Then there was the new physical training that begun a few months before. At the same time she joined the academy, Hinata quickly remembered she doesn't have classes that day. When she showed she was able to channel chakra and activate the Byakugan, she thought it was quite the accomplishment. Apparently, no one else did. They had recently introduced her to the clan's taijutsu style, the famous Juken. It was painful. How do they expect her to do it right if she still can't even see the circulatory system clearly? Obviously, her attempts at using the gentle fist so far have been rather pitiful. She does her best, and she's sure her father knows she's doing her best. Apparently, for the heiress, the best is not enough. Hinata doesn't hate her father. She loves him, really. She'd love him more if he acted his role every once in a while, though. She knows Hayashi was deeply hurt by her mother's death. She was hurt, too. It would have been better for both father and daughter if they had mourned their loss together. Unfortunately, Hayashi seemed to have chosen to wrap himself in a diamond cocoon of coldness and disdain. A part of her thought her father trained her so harshly because he was tired of being clan leader and he wanted to be replaced as soon as possible. Which brings us to the night before. Hina could swear she hadn't seen such levels of emotion in her father's expression since her mother's death. Somehow, the blonde-haired kid, Naruto, she quickly remembered, funny name, she thought, had dug up something her father had buried over 2.5 years before. He had done something she had been unable to do. She had to admit, she envied him, if just a little. She wasn't going to ask anyone to gouge her eyes out to check her father's reaction anytime soon, though. Besides, she knew. She had learned a lot more in those few instants she spent with Naruto than in years of boring lessons in etiquette and other noble crap. It wasn't what happened to him that caught her father's attention, at least not completely. It was his will, the way he clutched his life with those tiny little fingers of his, the way he refused to leave this world as a faceless name whose departure would be celebrated and then forgotten, and, most of all, the fact that, even after resigning to his dire fate, he still had it in himself to care about others. Eventually, she'd think about his smile, tainted by the horrid remains of his eyes crying blood and rainwater, and she'd recognize it as the horrendous sight it was. However, horrible as it was, she'd never forget it as the moment that changed her life, for the better. That same night, before sleep claimed her, she decided she wanted to be like that boy. She wanted to possess that will that was capable of caring about others even in the face of certain death. She promised herself she would actually strive to be that kind of person. She was tired of quiet, she was tired of shy, she was tired of pitiful. She was tired of many, many other things, but she'd get to those eventually. For now, she'd work on quiet, shy and pitiful. Yes. That night, a new Hinata was born, or so she said. Good morning, Hinata-sama. Eek. Dragged out of her inner motivational speech by a familiar voice, she was shocked to find out that at some point she had gotten off her bed, dressed herself, made her bed and walked out of her bedroom. Currently, she was standing with her back against a wall, her right hand on her chest, breathing heavily and feeling her heart fluttering like a hummingbird, and not in a good way. Basically, whoever had greeted her had scared the living shit out of her. Yes? Hinata's stutter was particularly extreme that morning, while the psychological construct that had finally taken shape in her mind screamed the very few curses she knew at her for acting like a scared little rabbit. For simplicity's sake, we'll call it inner Hinata. We could say it's her consciousness growing up before the rest of her. Calm down. Don't forget. New Hinata, new Hinata. The Hyuga heiress should be more aware of her surroundings. Hinata finally recognized the voice and the face as the same young adult that had taken her to the house at her father's order last night. While he was definitely scolding her, his face showed a kind smile which helped her feel more at ease. Hinata had a very good relationship with most people from the branch house. Where do you think she got the few dirty words she knows, but hasn't used, yet? Why yes. Good, but you can do better. I have been ordered to accompany you until you decide to eat breakfast, Hinata-sama. Would you like to go now, or do you have anything else in mind? Hinata's body froze. The young man was expecting something from her, an answer, to be precise. She didn't like responsibilities, not even the simplest ones, such as issuing orders. Don't be a coward. Come on, it's just a question, you can do this. Hinata decided to test the waters. Father? Hayashi-sama arrived quite late. He's still resting, but I am sure he'll wake up soon. The girl lowered her head, processing the information she had just acquired. The last time she had seen her father, she had left him with the boy, Naruto. Now she's been told her father had stayed awake until very late. What was he doing? What happened to Naruto? Why do her veins pop out in that disgusting way when she activates Byakugan? So, what to do? She decided she wanted to have breakfast with her father. She hoped he told her something about Naruto, because she was sure she would be unable to ask him about the boy herself. So, she had to look for a way to spend the idle time before the morning meal. Your name, please. All right. Confidence, confidence. The subtle shift in the male's expression told Hinata she was doing something right. Hyuga Sendai, Hinata-sama. Hinata nodded, working her posture and her expression in the most regal way her little body could muster. Well then, Sendai-san, would you help me pick a few flowers from the garden? The man blinked, and Hinata cheered mentally. He definitely didn't expect that. However, he was well trained. I'd be happy to, Hinata-sama. Waking up was an unsettling experience for Naruto. He had just gotten used to waking up to the aged ceiling of his new apartment. From that day onwards, he would wake up to see absolutely nothing. Naruto had always feared the darkness, to a point. He strongly believed that, with enough power, he could defeat any enemy. Even those which lacked a corporeal form, like the loneliness of lacking friends or a family, and the scorn and open hatred of the villagers of Konohagakure. Things such as evil, loneliness or emptiness mean little to his infant mind. Naruto was a person that lived for the day, and his undeveloped brain had too many mundane things to worry about to care about the most invertebrate aspects of reality. In that aspect, Naruto is a paradox. Humans tend to fear what they don't understand. Naruto sees no point in fearing that which he cannot even bother to try to understand. This is why he, in a way, feared the smothering, physical darkness, because, in the darkness of his empty, dirty room, his mind grows in awareness and grants him a terrifying understanding of truths better left unknown. In the darkness, in those fatuous moments of cursed enlightenment that predate blissful sleep, Naruto is painfully reminded of everything he has ever wanted and life has denied to him. In those moments, his mind cries, and his subconscious tortures him by showing him dreams of those things. In that way, the darkness, and his own mind, hurt him more than any villager. And now, because of the deranged outburst of some psycho, he would be forced to face that darkness for the rest of his life. Not for the first or the last time, Naruto felt his mood sinking in the gutter. He doubted he'd ever be able to return to a semblance of an ordinary life. The fact that his life before blindness wasn't really ordinary didn't help. However, this is Naruto we are talking about. Even at his early age, he knew the importance of attitude. Hey, knock it off already. He whispered to himself, slapping his cheeks for good measure. Quickly organizing his thoughts, he remembered everything that had taken place the night before, and he had to admit it had been quite an eventful night. He remembered Uchiha Itachi, the old man Hokage, Mr. H, and the Horizon couple. He still found it hard to believe they are a couple. Then he remembered his last conversation with the couple before he agreed to sleep for a while. Training. At the very early age of 7, training was already his favorite word, after ramen, and closely followed by jutsu. Naruto exclaimed in a way that, to the knowledgeable, would be quite reminiscent of one future Rock Lee. Training. Yes, training. Naruto's head jerked to his right. Saya, wife of Horizon, stood under the doorframe, looking at Naruto with an amused smile. She had already changed to her everyday clothes, a short-sleeved ankle-length butterfly-patterned black cheongsam. It was a shame Naruto couldn't see Saya's clothes, for they were quite appealing to the eye. A mandarin collar with a flowery knot button displayed Saya's lithe and narrow neck. The cheongsam possessed a semi-transparent effect at Saya's upper chest and back, playfully teasing the observant by revealing the beginning of Saya's small but firm breasts, and the main piece itself was a semi-transparent black silk jacqueroule of butterfly patterns with see-through effect of the fuchsia-colored inner lining. Two very high side slits proudly displayed a magnificent pair of legs, toned by years of care and the continuous practice of taijutsu. Fuchsia piping went along the collar, the cuffs, the slits and the lap rims. All in all, a very elegant choice of dressing. Sayane-chan. Good to see you're up early, Naruto, I like that. Naruto grinned as if he had just won a year's supply of ramen. He is truly a sucker for praise. You didn't feel my presence, did you, Naruto? The boy shook his head. Saya grinned, admiring the boy's blatant eagerness in every single of his actions, even shaking his head. "Don't worry, we'll work on that," she concluded. "So." She clapped rather loudly, surprising Naruto and claiming his undivided attention. "Training, right?" Even without eyes, his body language showed his eagerness to begin. Saya concluded Naruto had already associated training badassery. "Alright, Naruto, training begins now. I'm in the middle of making breakfast. While I get breakfast done, you will walk around the house and try to get a feel of the place. Take it slow, be careful and don't break anything. Deal?" "Deal." Naruto nodded. Saya chuckled, and Naruto could hear her firm steps as she walked away. "Alright, let's do this." Only Naruto can be so enthusiastic at doing something like, well, walking. Of course, even. Walking was a new experience for Naruto. While walking itself was not a problem, he hadn't lost his sense of balance. He easily understood what Saya had tried to say by taking it slow. He was already hated enough, and he didn't want his new friend Saya-nichan to hate him because of his unavoidable clumsiness. So, he advanced very carefully, slowly swinging his arms around to find possible obstacles and making sure the space before him was safe before making the next step. The first thing he did was exploring what he already called his room. He already knew the door was to the right, looking from the bed. The room turned out to be spacious, to his standards. He could make 5, normal, not long, steps from one wall to the other and 6 steps from the door to the large closet against the opposite wall. "I don't need this thing," Naruto muttered while touching around the immense wooden closet. "I don't have many clothes." Other than the exaggeratedly, once again, to his standards, large closet, Naruto, painfully, found a desk aligned against the rightmost wall. If we take the door as the south wall, a small bedside table with a strange glass lamp with a flowery shape. Later that evening Saya would show him that the lamp could work with both chakra and oil. Never, never mix both. Saya will warn him. Of course, it was a matter of time after Naruto learned to mold chakra before he tried. The explosion and the subsequent fire were both very impressive, and they gave Naruto a very on-the-spot demonstration of the usefulness of Suiton Jutsu, courtesy of an angry Shiki. Besides the closet, the desk and the little table, there was nothing but the single bed that took a sizable chunk of bedroom space for itself. The head of the bed leaned against the left wall and the opposite end was pretty much lodged on the room's center. Leaving the room and closing the door behind him, and feeling a sudden and rapidly growing urge to use the bathroom, Naruto touched around, figuring out that he was in some sort of passage that extended to both sides. Deciding to go to the right and supporting his left arm on the wall opposite to his room's door, he quickly found another door. It was locked. "Saya-nichan?" Naruto inquired rather loudly, and Saya replied from somewhere far behind and a little to his left. "Shiki's studio is locked, Naruto. You are not supposed to go in there without his permission. Please understand. He keeps important and private things in there." "Ah, alright." Naruto immediately made a mental note to stay away from that room. While his curiosity is second to no one else's, he also knew better than to intrude in the private matters of the person who was allowing him to stay in his house. He still didn't know what to make of Horazen Shiki, but he knew he didn't want to be in Shiki's bad side. 6 or so steps later he made it to another door. Touching around brought him an undeniable feeling of relief. It was the bathroom. It didn't take him long to find the toilet. Wisely choosing to sit down on it, Naruto eagerly and happily found hygienic relief. Using the toilet proved to be easy. Washing his hands? Not so. The trouble lied in finding the soap, which led to his curious hands to knock and drop all kinds of things nearby before he found the necessary object. When kneeling to try to find and pick up the dropped objects, he slammed his forehead on the edge of the wash basin. Screaming bloody murder, his face met the walls more than once while he looked for the dropped articles. The good thing, if it can be considered such, was that after finding all the objects, or so he thought, he had a very good idea of the layout of the room. From the door, the sink, toilet and bathtub all were placed against the right wall, in that order. There was also a shower, which occupied all the available space in the back of the room, from the bathtub to the left wall. He was surprised to see that the bathroom, like every other bedroom, was made entirely in wood, floor, walls and ceiling. He wondered how that worked, namely, how they made the wood impervious to water. The rightmost wall, again, from the door, of the bathroom coincided with the end of the corridor. Turning around and walking back the way he came, he found another, larger bedroom next to his own. He, correctly, assumed it belonged to Shiki and Saya. His enjoyment of the fabulously large bed was interrupted by Saya's call for breakfast. Naruto almost crashed with Saya near the end of the passageway, but the woman caught him in time and slowly led him to the dining table, a very low, round table large enough for 4 people to eat comfortably. He complained when Saya said she was going to feed him, claiming that he was perfectly capable of doing it himself. That's how he learned one of his life's most important lessons: no matter what you say, you can't stop Saya. He'd eventually figure out it wasn't just Saya, but all women. The woman clad in black and purple described him the layout of the rest of the Horizon family grounds while she shoved a weird metallic thing she called a spoon down his throat. The kitchen is right behind me. I'll eventually show you where everything is so that you can prepare your own meals. There's a wall behind you that separates this kitchen dining room from the living room. The living room has 2 large armchairs and a couch. We only use it on those rare occasions we have visitors. We used to welcome visits more often before. Nowadays only Sarutobi comes here once or twice a month. Enko-chan and Guy also show up every once in a while, so you'll eventually meet them. There aren't many decorations or fancy things, so there's little risk of your breaking anything. Oh, and the piano is to your right. Any questions? What's a piano? Saya blinked. Oh, I always forget. You don't see those kinds of things over here. For now let's just say it's a big thing I use to make music. I might show you later if you are a good boy. Anything else? Naruto shook his head before swallowing a mouthful of rice with some effort. Nope. Good. Now, the embarrassment aside, Naruto realized it was the first time since he had memory that he wasn't eating alone. The orphanage didn't really count. It might have been stacked with noisy children, but it might as well have been completely deserted. Ichiraku Ramen always seemed unusually devoid of clients whenever he showed up. It was also the first time someone cooked for him and only for him, without transference of money involved, that is. Not like he could blame old man Tucci, though. Cooking ramen is his job, after all. Sayane-chan. Naruto managed to utter before she shoved another spoonful of rice in his mouth. Where is Shiki-san? He left a while ago to meet with Hokage-sama, probably to arrange all things for your stay here. Naruto scratched the right side of his head under the bandages. I'm really staying here? Saya snorted. Well, if you want to train here, you have to stay here. It's not like you can make the trip between this place and your little shack. You are, well, you know, kind of, well, blind. Naruto pouted. It wouldn't be the first or the last time Saya truly lamented the loss of Naruto's eyes. She was sure his pouting face must have been bloody cute. She wouldn't be the only one to do that, either. I know. He mumbled. The volume of his grumbling increased when Saya patted his head rather rudely. Don't be like that. After we are done with you you'll be grateful you don't have eyes. Really? Really? So, eat your breakfast. You could use a bath, too. What about training? Everything in due time, Naruto. After breakfast, rich in calcium and other minerals necessary for Naruto's underdeveloped skeleton, Naruto showed Saya that he knew his way to the bathroom. After showing him how to use the shower, Saya said they didn't have time to fill the bathtub, and where the soap, and the shampoo, if he wanted some, was placed, Naruto was perfectly capable of taking a shower by himself. You'll have to wear the same clothes until Shiki bring your things from your apartment. Oh, and we're buying you new clothes. She had left before he could complain. When you are done, wait for me outside the house. 20 minutes later, Naruto took his time. Naruto stepped through the main entrance and closed the door behind him. The avalanche of scents that assaulted his nostrils appalled him. Naruto's sense of smell wasn't nearly as good as an Inuzuka's, but it was fairly better than an ordinary human's, and it allowed him to distinguish some of the many different aromas that filled the air around him. Naruto had always liked flowers. He liked the idea of beauty being so fragile, beauty being something that needed to be protected. That's why he liked taking care of plants and flowers. Besides, somehow, gardening helped him relax, something Naruto didn't do very often. Don't move! Saya exclaimed from somewhere far ahead. Naruto did as told, leaning his back against the closed door while he enjoyed the wonderful scents and the sounds of nature. Where in Konoha were they, anyway? 5 or so minutes later, Saya was by his side. Other than the house we live in, there are 2 other buildings and a greenhouse. There's a flower field in front of ours, made and taken care of by yours truly. Now, hold my hand, Naruto. Training begins now. Naruto's gasp and the wide grin that coated his face almost made Saya squeal. She was definitely going to enjoy this raising Naruto thing. They slowly walked away from the house, Saya guiding Naruto so that he wouldn't step on the flowers or end up kissing a tree. The Horizon wife explained the basics of what would be Naruto's training. Alright, the deal goes like this. You'll wake up at sunrise. You'll spend mornings with me. Tomorrow I'll teach you some basic exercises I expect you to perform every morning before and after breakfast from now on. After fitness training, we'll do perception training until lunch. Shiki will train you in the afternoons. I have absolutely no idea what he plans to do with you, only that it involves chakra. Whatever it is, it's training for allowing you to see without eyes. Cool. Naruto had many questions already at this point, but he knew he had to wait until Saya was done talking. Yes, very. Between all that training, we will be teaching you everything else. Everything else? Naruto tilted his head. You know, all the things a decent person must know: numbers, nature, history, laws, geography, house chores, general knowledge. Ah. We'll eventually hit the extra things all ninja should know: politics, strategy, a few tidbits of economy, very boring, but very useful stuff. Naruto nodded eagerly. He wasn't as stupid as to think that being a ninja was just cool weapons, cool jutsu and lots of heroics. His life had been harsh enough, reality had been slammed on him hard. At least Saya-nichan was honest, she would be teaching him more than a few boring things. But Uzumaki Naruto can take more than some boring lessons. He was going to become a kick-ass ninja, and that's it. However, when do I learn how to fight and, do ninja stuff? Saya smiled. She had been expecting that question. Naruto, you cannot walk without tripping or bumping on something. What makes you think you can learn anything remotely ninja-related? Ayuyu. Besides, you are supposed to learn those things at the academy, Naruto. That's why we have to make sure you can join the academy in the first place, right? If anything, Naruto could understand simple logic. Right. There. You have to become able to act independently. You have to prove you can perform just as if you had your eyes. That is our purpose. Formal ninja training comes after that, got it? Naruto nodded, and Saya didn't resist the urge to mess with his spiky blonde hair. Naruto groaned when he felt Saya's hand turning his hair into an even bigger mess. It won't be easy, Naruto, but Shiki and I agreed to train you because we know you can do it. Of course. That's the spirit. So, any questions? Yep. What's perception training? What we are going to begin right now. Really? Really? So, next question. Okay. About that chakra thing, I've heard people talk about it, and I know it's a ninja thing, but... Right, chakra. If you don't mind, I'll leave the explanation to my husband. I'm sure he'll teach you lots about chakra in the afternoon. For now, I can tell you that chakra is what makes ninja different from ordinary people, or more precisely, the ability to mold, shape and manipulate chakra. Chakra is what allows ninja to do all those amazing things ordinary people cannot. Naruto and Saya walked in silence for a minute, neither uttering a word other than when Saya guided the boy through the thick sea of trees that made Training Area 69. Before Naruto could ask about their training, Saya decided to get things started. This morning you'll join me as I run some errands. You will train while we do this. How? It's perception training, Naruto. It doesn't involve any straining physical effort and it doesn't involve chakra, yet, so you can do it whenever you want. So, shall we get started? Naruto nodded even more eagerly than before. Sure. All right. Saya giggled, infused with Naruto's enthusiasm. This training was like nothing she had ever done before. So, Naruto, have you ever been told about the 5 senses? Naruto wrinkled his nose and made a strange gesture with his mouth. I think, at the orphanage. Smell, taste. Saya cued and Naruto would finish. Touch, hearing and sight. Yeah. Yes, those are the 5. However, you must know there are other senses. In particular, there are 2 other senses you must know of. The first one is the vestibular sense, which allows you to perceive balance and acceleration. I think you know what I mean by balance, right? Naruto nodded. He had done a lot of balancing ever since his pranking days began. For a second he wondered if he would be able to pull another of his pranks ever again. Acceleration is, to say it bluntly, a change of speed. This means your vestibular sense allows you to control how fast you move. Got it? Watch out for those roots ahead. Got it. Naruto repeated while he made long, exaggerated steps to avoid the roots he couldn't see. Even more than the fact that Saya bothered to explain things to him, Naruto liked it that he actually understood what she told him. The second sense could use an example. Swing your arms. I don't care how, just go crazy. Naruto frowned at Saya's odd request but did as told, flailing his arms wildly in random ways and directions. Stop walking. Keep moving your arms. Now, Naruto, you're not looking at your arms, right? I can't. Naruto stated plainly, still swinging his arms like a deranged person. Right. So you can't see your hands. You can't hear them, taste, smell them or touch them either, right? Naruto thought about it for a second before nodding. But you know where they are, right? Naruto suddenly stopped, as his brain digested what Saya had just told him. Ooh. Yes, Naruto. That is the 7th sense, proprioception. It is basically self-awareness. Even if you lose all 5 senses, you'll always be aware of where your hands and legs and other parts of your body are. Saya pulled Naruto's arm, telling him to move on. Now you must be wondering why I'm telling you this. You now know of 7 senses, one of which you have lost. The first stage of making up for the loss of your sight is working on the other 6. The purpose of perception training is to improve your hearing, your sensitivity, your senses of smell, taste and balance, as well as your proprioception. Questions? Naruto shook his head until it hurt. He liked learning things, as long as they were interesting. Saya grinned. Good. Now, hold on tight. Before Naruto could ask what she meant by that, Saya had wrapped his arms around his waist and jumped. Naruto didn't need his eyes to perceive the power of that jump. He felt his body being carried higher and higher and, after an instant of perfect stillness, gravity pulled him back to the ground. He would have landed rather embarrassingly if Saya hadn't been there to hold him. In any case, Naruto was sweating noticeably by the time his feet touched solid ground. What the? Why did you do that? Wordlessly, Saya slammed Naruto against something. A chain link fence. While Naruto touched the seemingly out-of-place object, Saya explained what had just happened. We jumped over the fence that separates training area 69 from the Sarutobi family grounds. I can see the old Hokage's house from here, or at least the roof. Too many trees. Anyway, let's move. We do not want to intrude for long. Before Naruto asked, Saya told him about training area 69 and its true identity as the location of the Urazen residence. Here in Konoha our house is sort of an open secret. Civilians do not know, but most do not even know who we are either. Only shinobi of special jounin status and above are told, plus a few, family friends, you could say. Why do you keep it a secret? Naruto inquired. Well, we do like the privacy and the peace. Shiki and I, we are kind of, retired. We used to travel a lot and do all sorts of different things, Shiki working on his seals and me, coming up with taijutsu styles one after the other. We don't do that anymore. We have already seen enough. That's why you are our last and most ambitious project, Naruto. Besides, we can use the whole incognito thing. We may live in Konoha, but we are not Konoha shinobi. You're not? Naruto asked, sincerely puzzled. No, we are not. We've never been. We have no allegiance to any village. We might be working for Konoha today, and we might be doing a favor to IWA tomorrow, and Konoha can't hate us for it. So you work for anyone? Naruto didn't know much about mercenaries, only that they didn't sound like something he'd like to be. Also, he found it hard to picture Sayanichin as a mercenary. Wrong. We work for no one. I don't get it. What I'm trying to say, Naruto, is that we don't work like ordinary shinobi. We don't take missions from anyone. Everything we do of our own initiative. We do what we want, do not make anyone angry, help a few people here and there, and nobody bothers us. Well, almost nobody. In any case, that's our life, mine and Shiki's, or it used to be. We're sort of retired, I told you. Of course, Saya's explanation had been the extremely clean version. It wasn't nearly that easy. In that world of chakra and shinobi and supernatural powers, it just couldn't be. But Naruto didn't need to know the full details of the Urazen couple's past, yet. When the time came for Naruto to know, he wouldn't be alone. He wouldn't be the only person in need of that knowledge. But, if you aren't Konoha ninja, why do you live here? Saya shrugged, forgetting that Naruto couldn't see her. Because we like the place? It has a nice weather, except during summer. I can't stand the heat. Needless to say, what Saya had said was far from the complete truth. Now, enough talking about me, brat. Keep moving. We are supposed to do perception training, aren't we? Naruto would have widened his eyes if he could. He couldn't, so he just mentally kicked himself. He was training. He could ask unrelated questions after the training. Right. He said as he let Saya guide him. All right boy, then listen, and listen well, I don't like repeating things. From now on, assume everything I tell you to be a lesson, and absorb it as such. Got it. Saya shot a glance at somewhere in the canopy formed by the tightly packed trees that surrounded the spacious Sarutobi residence. She couldn't see it, but she felt a presence concealed within the leaves. With a wave of a hand, she dismissed it and focused her attention of the eager blonde. Yes, she was slowly growing quite fond of her new student. Not that Naruto had done anything to deserve that fondness, it was just, as explained before, Saya's maternal instincts finally kicking in. Deep within the cover of the leaves, Sarutobi Asuma returned the look with an amused expression. He was familiar with Horazan Saya, she and her husband had always been friends of the family. He couldn't help but wonder why she was in the company of Uzumaki Naruto of all people. He knew it was none of his business, but that wouldn't stop him from asking his father when he got the chance. Maybe it was related to the reason his old man barely slept that night, or why he had left so early, without eating breakfast, despite his and his sister-in-law's insistence. He knew it was none of his business, but the unusual combination of events left Asuma more than intrigued. After all, he hadn't failed to notice the dried blood stains on the rags Naruto called clothes. Precision, attention, perfection. These three words are important for every shinobi, and to you they'll be critical. Repeat those three words, Naruto. Precision, attention, perfection. Got it. After leaving the Sarutobi grounds, Naruto and Saya were in what we could call the metropolitan area of Konohagakure. However, the density of buildings was far lower than what Naruto most accustomed to. This is, of course, because Naruto rarely visited the large eastern section of the village dedicated to housing the most notorious clans and families. The streets were unnaturally empty of life, a direct consequence of the revelry of the night before. It would take a while longer for most of Konohagakure to wake up. Only the shinobi population was already readying itself for another day of work. Precision, Naruto. Precision implies no unnecessary actions. Only do the absolute minimum required to accomplish the desired objective, with the appropriate caution. Overdoing it is never appropriate, but not doing enough is definitely worse. Precision means flowing through the battlefield and shaping the flow of battle. Precision is the understanding of timing and using this knowledge to your benefit. Do not waste your time, Naruto. No prancing around trying to look cool. Coolness comes with the reputation. In a mission, only the mission and the safety of you and your team matters. Got it? Precision. Got it. Naruto nodded eagerly, still holding hands with Saya, thinking that Saya sounded pretty cool when she was explaining things. Attention. The key word for most is observe. Since you can't do that, you have to make up for it with everything you've got. Listen, Naruto. Keep those ears of yours clean and open. Same goes for your nose and your hands. Memorize voices, scents, textures and tastes. Everything can become knowledge, and knowledge is always useful. Knowing yourself is strength. Knowing others reveals their weaknesses. Always be attentive, but you must be cautious, too, for you might be receiving false information from the enemy. Never assume things, Naruto. You must always question everything. Got it? Attention. Always attentive. Watch out for the barrel. Which bar dash? Saya chuckled while Naruto groaned on the sandy street, rubbing his sore nose. You have a long ways to go, grasshopper. The lesson continued only after they resumed their walk. Perfection. Perfection to a ninja means success, achievement of the mission parameters and flawless performance. Being a shinobi is a dangerous job, and it's a job that does not tolerate failure. To a ninja, doing things right is the difference between life and death, praise and scorn, glory and shame. Ninjas who make mistakes not only end up dead, they also risk the lives of their companions and the reputation of their family and their village. And that's it for now. We have time for one question. Stop walking. Naruto caught the hint. He had to think of the most appropriate question, and do it fast. He had many possible questions in his head, but, since they were supposed to be doing perception training, he guessed. It was a bad beginning of the day for 7-year-old Yamanaka Ino. Despite not having classes at the academy that day, her mother woke her up with the first lights of day to help with the house chores. Wearing a plain white sundress, her fashion sense not being nearly as developed and necessary, yet, her emerald green eyes lazily looked around the flowery garden in front of the main entrance while the tool in her right hand sprinkled the many blossoms. The empty streets didn't offer much in the way of relief for her bored mind and the body that claimed for a few more hours of sleep. She had stayed until very late the night before, with all the partying and eating. She loved the Golden Festival, an unofficial name for the holiday that celebrates the Nine-Tails' defeat, and a blatant and rather lame reference to the Fourth. She asked an invisible god why she had to wake up early when every non-shinobi in Konoha was still sleeping, when two presences in a corner of her field of view drew her attention. Much to her surprise, she recognized the two of them. The girl showed up by the house or the flower shop at least once per season since she had memory, supplying Ino's mother with rare, exotic or even off-season flowers. The boy was the one no one talks to, even if she didn't really understand why. Many girls, and even some boys she had actually dared to ask about it, had told her their parents didn't allow them to even get near him, apparently because he is dangerous, rotten, and evil. When Ino asked her parents, after one afternoon in a nearby park in which she actually pitied his obvious loneliness, they didn't give her any reasons, but they, too, more like her mother, but it would take Ino a while to notice this, insisted she should stay away from the kid. Ino is actually a very curious girl. This would eventually degenerate into shameless gossiping several years later, but, for now, she's just a little more curious than your average child, but not nearly as curious as Naruto. This is probably the reason she quietly stared at the duo that approached her with slowly, almost deliberately measured steps, Ino's watering can long forgotten. She had absolutely no reason to dislike the boy. In fact, she kinda liked his untamed blonde hair, with its tone darker than hers. Being only 7 years old, she wasn't embarrassed to admit this. She was a little wary of his dirty, messy and rugged looks, though. She quickly noticed he looked particularly dirty and messy that morning. While his face looked clean, why are his eyes covered like that? Is it some sort of game? His not so white anymore white t-shirt didn't even deserve the title of t-shirt anymore. There were more holes and dirt than cloth. She wondered if the kid had been in one of those barbaric pseudo-brawls kids her age seemed to be so fond of. Cammy knows why. The young woman made a bizarre contrast with her beautiful clothes, her elegant poise and her soothing smile. She seemed to be guiding the boy, who obviously couldn't see a thing, with bandages covering his eyes, and she also seemed to be doing most of the talking. Ino also noticed the basket the woman held with her other hand. She, correctly, guessed the woman had brought more flowers for her mother. Ino giggled when the woman guided the boy head first on a huge barrel. Why was the thing there, anyway? She could expect a barrel in the business district or the market. When they were close enough, the woman, Ino still couldn't remember her name. It has something to do with flowers, though, and Note 1, greeted her with a wink. Ino had seen more beautiful women. If you asked her, Ino would say Saya is too short and pale and thin. Yes, Ino would say that. 7 years old Ino, of course, but the woman wasn't precisely ugly, either. Fair would be the best word. She wouldn't mind having legs like that woman's when she grew up, though. Hence Ino's blushing and hurried bowing. Praise and scorn, glory and shame. Ninjas who make mistakes not only end up dead, they also risk the lives of their companions and the reputation of their family and their village. And that's it for now. We have time for one question. Stop walking. The peculiar couple stopped in front of Ino. The woman was looking down at the little girl, and the boy was obviously unaware of Ino's presence, apparently busy pondering this one question the woman expected. It didn't take him long to open his mouth to speak. What does that have to do with perception? Saya turned from Ino to Naruto, her apparently perennial smile never leaving her face. Good question. Naruto looked up and offered her his best grin. Naruto loved praise, and Saya was more than willing to praise him when he did right. Precision is impossible without good perception. To know what to do and how to do it in the most efficient way, you need perfect awareness of the situation in every way. Attention is an element of good perception, and, in both mission and battle, you must pay attention to everything: the opponent's position, the way he moves, the way he acts, the way he speaks, his choice of weapons, the jutsu he uses, the layout of the place, all sources of sound and smell. Everything can be important, everything can be tool, and a tool you don't use will be used against you. Finally, perfection is the end result and what you must always strive for. If you fail at the previous two elements, you'll never reach the third. Right, I think I get it. Good. Now, a question for you. Alright. What am I carrying with my other hand? Naruto was obviously confused. You're carrying something, Saya-nichan. How am I supposed to know that, anyway? Saya gently smacked Naruto's head with her knuckles. What did I say about attention, Naruto? Now, what does your nose tell you? Naruto frowned and sniffed around, saturating his nostrils with flowers. It smells of flowers. Lots of them. Like in the garden. Exactly. We are standing in front of Yamanaka Inoichi's house. There are lots of flowers on the entrance, so you probably caught their scent. But I also happen to be carrying a basket full of flowers, so you technically got the answer right. Remember, Naruto, attention. Naruto nodded eagerly. Okay. Suddenly, however, he frowned. There's something else. Saya's smile became a bit more calculating. He caught her scent, too. Impressive. That would be, Saya had to turn to Ino and bow lightly. You will have to excuse my rudeness, but may I ask your name again, daughter of Yamanaka? I seem to have forgotten. Ino was startled by the sudden call for her attention, after being immersed in the unusual conversation. Yamanaka Ino. She exclaimed rather hastily after an ample bow. Pleased to meet you. The pleasure is mine, Ino-chan. My name is Hurazen Saya, and the little runt next to me is Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto turned his head in the approximate direction of Ino's voice. Hello, wherever you are, nay, Saya-nichan. What is it? I think I've heard that name before, Yamanaka. Naruto made his trademark thinking facial distortion. Ino had to admit that thing he did with his nose was kinda funny. He finally exclaimed. Flower Yamanaka. Naruto gained a lot of expertise on the layout of Konohagakure through his many aimless walks ever since he became old enough to walk around on his own, which was considerably earlier than the average child. Besides, walking aimlessly in training were pretty much the bulk of his schedule until last night, plus the occasional visit to Ichiraku Ramen after he discovered the wondrous stand, the just as occasional visit to the Hokage Tower to make idle chat with the old man, and the extremely rare visit to the library. Yes, Yamanaka, Ino-chan. Saya and Ino blinked as one. Naruto knew many names among Konoha's citizens, both young and old. He had practiced Saya's advice on attention long before meeting her. Besides, the diminutive part of him that still hoped one of the kids would eventually invite him to play told him it would be convenient to know their names. Also, Naruto had stuck his face on the looking glass more than once to see the beautiful blooms of the Yamanaka shop. Yeah, I remember Ino-chan. Short hair, sorta like mine, but all nice and shiny, green eyes, really cute. Naruto described his mental record of one Yamanaka Ino, throwing shame straight out of the metaphorical window. Saya just had to raise an eyebrow after that. She was quite amused by Naruto's choice of words. Ino's blinking and blushing was a nice touch. The kid has a unique way with words, I'll say. It's good to see you appreciate beauty, Naruto. Yes, Ino-chan is certainly very cute. Ino's pink cheeks changed to a far less subtle crimson. Saya mentally congratulated herself. Now, Ino-chan, can you go get your mother and tell her Saya is here? Sure. Ino hurriedly left, the beginning of a smile forming on her round face. Just like Naruto is a sucker for praise, Ino seemed to not mind being complimented on her looks, even at such an early age. Naruto and Saya knew something was wrong when they perceived a particularly loud female voice from within the house. The walls didn't allow them to hear the exact words used, but the tone gave Saya a very good idea of the nature of the problem. Unconsciously, she wrapped an arm around Naruto and pulled him closer to her. An embarrassed but secretly pleased Naruto leaned his body on Saya's right side. Affectionate human contact was something Naruto severely lacked. A minute after Ino disappeared inside the house and 10 seconds after the scandalous female ceased her undecipherable ranting, the door was opened again, revealing not Ino's mother, but the father, Yamanaka Inoichi. While he was wearing his usual shinobi attire, his hair wasn't properly tidied up in its trademark ponytail. Ino stood nervously behind her father, eyeing Saya and Naruto with a mixture of wariness and confusion. That was all the confirmation Saya needed. Inoichi greeted Saya with a subtle nod, and his eyes quickly moved to the bandaged boy. The Hurazen wife was pleased to see Inoichi's expression didn't show any negative feeling aimed at Naruto. If anything, he looked tired and more ready to hit the sack than to begin a day of arduous ninja work. That's quite the hangover, Inoichi-kun. Ino blinked and quickly looked at her two elders, from Saya to Inoichi and back to Saya. She didn't remember anyone else calling her father Inoichi-kun, except when he and his two friends were particularly drunk and teasing. Ugh! The tall man groaned in disgust. Leave me alone. I have a jutsu that might help with that. There was a flicker in Inoichi's tired eyes and his expression changed to one of relief. You're a goddess. Saya's smile widened for an instant. So I've been told. Ino watched in amazement how Saya did her medical magic by simply placing her right hand on her father's chest. She didn't use hand seals and there weren't any strange auras or colored lights. Saya only whispered something Ino couldn't get, stood silently in front of Inoichi for a few seconds, and she was done. Naruto stood deathly still for the few seconds he didn't feel Saya's reassuring touch, choosing not to move at all rather than risking screwing up in any way in a foreign house. Ino didn't see anything unusual, but the results were obvious. Her father stood tall, proud and energetic. His eyes weren't as bloodshot and even his skin looked a bit healthier. You haven't lost your touch, Hurazen-sama. Inoichi said while he fixed his hair. Saya shrugged, dismissing the praise. Tsunade wouldn't even need to touch you. Maybe, but that doesn't take away your merit. Whatever. So, care to tell me why hasn't your woman shown up to greet me? She said with tone that clearly said she already knew the answer. Inoichi sighed, mentally cursing her wife for pushing him into such sorts of trouble. She doesn't mind meeting you, but Saya went for the kill. She won't admit Naruto inside her house. Naruto felt the all-too-familiar twinge of unjustified rejection, the just as familiar, why, ringing in his head like a macabre serenade that forever haunted his days. Inoichi couldn't help but extend his pity to the kid when he saw Naruto's tiny fists clenching and his body tensing. Ino, ignorant of Naruto's circumstances, could only wonder why her mother had gone ballistic at the thought of Naruto stepping within her house. Sure, the kid could use a change of clothes, but anyone who said she was cute couldn't be that bad, right? Naruto would have moved yet another step closer to the ever-threatening world of angst hadn't Saya offered her support in the shape of a firm yet gentle reassuring hand on his shoulder. The message was obvious: don't worry. I'm here. You're not alone anymore. However, Saya of the healing smile knew quiet gestures weren't enough. Besides, she had planned to do what she was about to do without Ino's mother temper tantrum. Naruto. Why yes? Now you're going to do a little exercise. You ready? She had Naruto on exercise. Sure. Alright, then take the basket I'm carrying. When the basket was in Naruto's hands, Saya turned to Ino. Ino-chan, would be so kind to call Naruto's name so he knows where you are? She looked back down at Naruto. Naruto, you're going to use Ino's voice as your guide, and you're going to give her the basket. Okay? Roger. Back to Ino. Ino-chan. A confused Ino looked up at her just as confused father, who shrugged. She looked back at the bandaged boy wearing rags. Naruto? It was a very simple exercise. Ino was only 12 feet or so away, and Naruto's sense of direction wasn't that bad. He was careful with his steps, though, for the usual reason of not wanting to break or step on anything. There was nothing but empty space and Inoichi between the two children, so that wasn't a problem. Less than a minute later, the basket was in Ino's hands, and the girl was looking at its contents with admiration. Her mind was already picturing the beautiful works of art her mother would make with them. Her eyes turned to Naruto only to admire the cute flush on his cheeks and the contagious grin on his face after Saya said 3 very simple words. Good job, Naruto. Inoichi's eyes were fixed on the bandages that covered Naruto's eyes. Horazan-sama, may I ask? No, you may not, Inoichi. Saya interrupted, also allowing Naruto to use her voice to return to her side. However, there's something I need to tell you. My husband and I have taken Naruto as our new apprentice and he has taken residence in our home. Therefore, he shall be treated with the respect he deserves. Shiki and I will not tolerate acts of aggression towards him of any kind. This decision was made with the consent and support of the third Hokage, so any complaints you or any other member of your clan might have should be taken to him. I fully intend to present Naruto to all the relevant clans in the proper way when he's ready. Think of this as an informal introduction. Saya turned her back to the two Yamanakas and pulled Naruto so that he'd do the same. Yes, tell your wife that's the last she'll get from me until she grows up and gets over it. I'm sure you know what I mean. And so, the Uzumaki and the Horazan walked away. Inoichi stared at the Horazan emblem on the back of the Cheongsam, a taijutsu, yin-yang symbol, surrounded by the 8 trigrams, which were themselves surrounded by an outer black circle. He felt like calling Saya again, he was getting a headache. When a masked Anbu appeared a few yards in front of him, eliciting a shriek out of his frightened daughter, Inoichi knew it would be one of those days. While he listened the instructions the Anbu gave him by order of the Hokage and also consoled his poor little angel by caressing her smooth, silky hair, Kami, she'll be gorgeous when she grows up, he felt like taking a page from his friend Shikaku's book. Damn it, this is too troublesome. He growled. It was, as usual, a silent breakfast at the Hyuga household. Hayashi and Hinata sat on opposite ends of a low table way too large for just the two of them. Her bodyguard, Sendai, had been dismissed by her father the moment she entered the dining room. After greeting her sire with a polite bow and carefully measured words, she liked how they came out, she joined him in a rather bland meal. Not that she blamed the cooks, her father never gave an opinion, positive or negative, no matter what they prepared. If the boss doesn't care, why should they make an effort? Yes, it was an ordinary breakfast at the Hyuga house. It was also one of the occasions when Hayashi and Hinata engaged in the Hyuga equivalent of idle chat. It didn't happen very often, though. Hinata guessed it would happen more often if they had a larger family. Well, they do have a huge family, but you get my point. Hinata? Why yes. Damn it. Surprised by her father, her mind immediately went haywire and her voice failed her. Her father's expression didn't change, but her active mind filled the gap. He was disappointed by her reaction. She just knew it. Still, she waited for his next words. Was he finally going to tell her about his lateness? About the boy, Naruto? I was told by Mikado-san that you were at the gardens earlier this morning. Hinata gritted her teeth. Hyuga Mikado, of the clan council. Needless to say, he was also one of the people who watched her every movement looking for the slightest flaw to rub on her father's face. Why were they so eager to display her as the clan's biggest failure? She could do that perfectly fine by herself. Not that you plan to do that. Knew Hinata. Yes, this was a perfect test to see whether she could truly become this new Hinata. The scenario was obvious. Apparently, even a silly thing such as picking flowers is below the Hyuga heiress. The Hyuga heiress cannot water plants, or get her hands dirty from some light gardening. If anyone asked her, she found that rather pathetic, and hypocritical. May I ask what you were doing, Hinata? She couldn't hate her father. As a father, he has every right to ask. Besides, it wasn't the first time this happened. It wasn't Hinata's first attempt at gardening. It grew into her when she figured out she needed flowers to indulge in her other hobby of flower pressing. I was picking out some flowers for my personal use. Hinata lowered her head. She had yet to develop the ability to read emotions by combining Byakugan with natural insight and basic psychology. She had been told her father was very good at this, after a very lengthy explanation on the meaning of the word psychology, but she knew herself and her father enough to figure out her sire's thoughts with frightening accuracy. She had lowered her head. Her father was probably expecting the usual stammering tirade of half-hearted excuses and apologies and empty promises of doing better in the verge of tears. She was surprised and pleased with herself for this last fact. She didn't feel the beginning of tears of shame, a feeling she had been quickly getting all too familiar with ever since her private teachers took her education to the next level. Not anymore, I hope. A few minutes later, when she thought about it, she'd realized that the reason she hadn't been possessed by shame and nervousness was the fact that she had actually bothered to put some thought into the situation and realized she was actually in the right, not Hyuga Mikado. Right there on that dining table, Hinata used one of the few benefits the title of heiress carried, information. The title of heiress meant she had to go to many places, and pretty much forced her to hear many conversations. Adding to that the gossip among the female members of the branch house, and we get one very knowledgeable little Hyuga. A few years later, her little sister Hanabi would take this heiress information network to a whole new level. Before her father could say anything that crushed her slowly ascending spirit, Hinata struck. With a proper diplomatic voice many people would come to fear in the distant future, the Hyuga heiress spoke. Speaking of Mikado-san, I was wondering if Oda-sama could help me with a little predicament. Hook, line and sinker. Hayashi was, to say the least, intrigued. Speak. It has recently come to my notice that Mikado-san is particularly fond of chocolates, Oda-sama. Maybe Oda-sama knows if Mikado-san has any special preferences, so I can offer him a proper present? Also, I'd like to know of just how much would be appropriate. Too much chocolate cannot be good at his age, I mean. The offensive was twofold. First, Hinata offered her father information he ignored, even if it was something as mundane as a council member's little guilty pleasure. It's not like he could expect more from a 6-year-old. However, her gesture meant Hinata understood the rules of the game of politics. Everything has a cost, even her father's support. Second, it made Hinata's message clear. Had Hinata been 10 years older, she'd have said something like this to Hyuga Mikado: I know of your little sissy hobbies, you dumb fat prick. Now get the fucking way out of mine. Well, maybe not exactly that choice of words, but the idea gets across. Oh. Hinata used a fake rhetorical tone so well concealed Hayashi almost felt like hugging her. Oh, excuse my rudeness, Oda-sama. I believe you were asking me something about my business at the gardens, right? What was it again? Nothing of importance, Hinata. Two pairs of pupil-less eyes met, and Hinata knew she had done something right. Her father approved of her performance. All right. You go, girl. She made a mental note to show her gratitude to that boy, Naruto, the next chance she got. She wondered if a hug would be too much. She wondered if she would actually be able to hug a total stranger. Yes, our little Hinata has grown up a lot in a single night. So has Naruto, in a way. A knock on the door. A door made of wood and panels of translucent paper doesn't make much noise when knocked. Also, it cannot be knocked too harshly or these panels might end up torn. Fortunately for the messenger, breakfast at the Hyuga household is so damn quiet and boring. Come in. Hayashi uttered with his neutral, stern tone. The sliding door was hurriedly opened and, after a quick bow, a random branch house member kneeled before Hayashi presenting a scroll. 15 seconds later, Hayashi had devoured the contents of the scroll with his eyes and, after a sequence of seals that startled Hinata, the scroll became nothing but ashes in an instant. The little girl was surprised to see her father actually knew katan, jutsu other than the special advanced juken techniques she had heard so much of. Of course, Hayashi knew better than to use any of the few jutsu he knew in front of any council member or any servants connected to them. Hinata had just proved him she was more insightful than she let on, and the messenger's loyalty was unquestionable for more than one reason. Hokage-sama has requested a meeting. I must depart immediately. He declared, and Hinata was elated to realize her father was actually excusing himself to his daughter. Why didn't I come up with this determination thing before? After dismissing the messenger, Hayashi took a few last sips of his bland breakfast before standing up. Hinata bowed to his back as he reopened the sliding door to leave. Have a nice day, Ota-sama. Hinata. Yes? Uzumaki Naruto is alive and well. However, he has been rendered permanently blind. We will talk later. With that, he was gone, leaving a new Hinata alone with her thoughts. For some reason she couldn't fathom, the morning seemed a lot brighter. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. Guys, make sure to help the author by visiting the link in the description. This is Fox Sage, and I'm signing off.